Good evening, everyone. Sorry about that. It is 6:23. This is a special meeting of the Brattleboro Select Board, I believe.
Regular meeting, I believe.
The 29th is special.
Special meeting. And it is November 29th. And Patrick, has this special meeting been properly warned?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. In that case, I'll move directly to chair remarks. So I have two remarks. The first one is the really important one. So on behalf of the entire select board, I'm very pleased to announce that we have made a determination on a new town manager. His name is John Potter of Boulder, Colorado. This is after a long interview process that the board undertook from July of 2022 to now. I'll read a couple of prepared remarks about John so that the community can get to know him a little bit. John Potter currently serves as the Deputy Director of the Open Space and Mountain Parks Department in Boulder, Colorado, where he has been since 2016. In this position, Mr. Potter oversees a division of 50 staff and manages a budget of between $4 million and $7 million annually. Previously, he worked for the state of Oregon as a senior policy advisor in the Department of State Lands and as the assistant director responsible for managing Oregon's state park system. During his tenure with the state of Oregon, Mr. Potter led a team of 725 staff and oversaw an annual budget of $60 million. Earlier in his career, Mr. Potter was a director of land management for New York City's Bureau of Water Supply, the land superintendent for Martha's Vineyard Land Bank Commission, and a manager for Lands Sake Incorporated in the town of Weston, Massachusetts. He has an extensive administrative experience in the management of public lands, facilities, and services, and has collaborated on numerous complex, cross-disciplinary, and intergovernmental projects throughout his career. He earned a bachelor's degree in history from Williams College and a master's degree in forest management from Yale University, and is a native of Eastern Massachusetts. Again, it's my great pleasure to announce that next Tuesday at the regularly scheduled select board meeting, Mr. Potter is going to be joining us for the board's public consideration of his contract. So if you'd like to meet John, you can come to the board meeting, and he'll be here, and I believe he'll be here for the full meeting. So with that, I will pass it over to Patrick for interim town manager remarks.
I really don't have any official remarks this evening, other than I'm really excited about the arrival of Mr. Potter. I think the board has made a wonderful choice, and I wish him all the best.
Thank you, Patrick. Board members, select board comments and committee reports. Liz?
I just want to remind you, Ian, that you said you had two things and you only told us one.
Oh, that's absolutely right. Thank you. If you let me go back, the other thing is petitions for candidacies are currently open for, is it RTM rep? I'm looking to Hillary Francis, our town clerk, who's in the audience. RTM rep, select board member. Yeah, you want to? Obviously, I didn't have prepared remarks for this.
So yes, town meeting members for representative town meeting, any town officer, so select board, lister, constable, second constable, trustee for public funds. I'm sure I am missing some moderator.
Yep.
As well as school board directors from Brattleboro can come to the town clerk's office at any point and pick those up.
So they'll come to your office, they'll pick up a petition, then they'll have to get a certain number of signatures depending on what petition they're taking out, and then they need to return it to you by
January 30th, I believe, off the top of my head.
Okay, so we won't quote you on that.
Right,
Yeah.
the press release went out today. It's
Excellent.
on social media as well as with traditional media. So, and if you have questions, you can call our office and I'm happy to answer.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Hillary. Let me put you on the spotlight there. All right, back to Liz. Did you have any other comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. Other board members? Daniel.
Yeah, I guess I just want to kind of chime in and say that I'm excited for John to come here and I'm looking forward to getting to work with him, and he's a really experienced manager. And so that's going to be great for the town.
I'll echo those comments and say, if you were wondering why the select board has been so, distracted and busy with other things, we've been really working hard on this, and we're all very excited to have John come and meet with us next week. So,
Jess?
Yeah, I just want to echo the excitement in the room. I think John was just a fantastic candidate, and I want to also express gratitude for Patrick and Sally Nix, our HR director here, who sat in on the process and provided insight and guidance to us this time around, which was very helpful and different than last time. And I think it will lead to some great outcomes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jess. Yes, Liz.
Well, I don't want everybody else to welcome John and not welcome him myself. So we are all very pleased with the outcome of the search process. And I would say that we were distracted from our duties in the process. Thank you.
I agree.
All right. John, we're really looking forward to having you. All right. With that, I'll move it to, unless board, anything else? Nope. Okay, so we'll go to public participation. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on something that's not on the agenda tonight. So I'm going to look to Zoom and see if anyone has their hand up. I'm going to give everybody a second. And I don't see any hand up, and I'll look to the room. No. All right. So in that case, we will move along to agenda item 6, new business 6A, the FY24 budget. Patrick, am I tossing this over to you first?
Yes, sir. So thank you very much. There's I think some have called this in the past the night of potpourri.
Yep.
Where some of the smaller departments are all sort of bundled together here. And so we're going to be covering a good bit of territory in the fiscal 24 budget, but in lots of small little chunks. And the way I'd like to do this, if it's all right with the board, is to just start on page 5, which is the beginning of the expenditure section of the budget. Starts with the town manager's office, and we'll just sort of work through it.
Yep.
Going sort of little department by little department until we reach the end.
And are we going to have department heads join us?
Yeah, at different points in time, Sally Nix, Kim Frost, and Hillary Francis will be joining us. They're all here with us this evening, and they'll speak to their specific portions of the budget. But why don't I kick it off with the brief discussion on the town manager's office.
Excellent.
The town manager's office has a fiscal 24 budget of $285,160. This is up about $2,850 or 1% over fiscal 23. All of the additional expenditures occur in staff salaries, and those go along largely with cost of living increases provided to the staff. I will point out, I noticed in looking at this today that there is a slight decrease in the town manager's salary. This was not put together with Mr. Potter's contract in mind. And so, we can make an adjustment to this to reflect actuals. It was a placeholder, and at several points in time this evening, I think I'll be calling out numbers that were placeholders when this budget was put together.
Yep.
That, since then we've learned, here's the new final number, or here's the new final number for that. So the town manager's office is a 3-person department. It is the town manager, myself, the assistant town manager, and the executive assistant, which is currently Jessica Stickler. And it's just those 3 positions. There's a little bit of expenditure set up for conferences, postage, transportation, and the like, but it's a small office, and we support the board and respond to the public and oversee all departments for the town. Any specific questions about the town manager's office?
Yeah, board, considering we have quite a few, maybe we just tackle them one at a time. And if there's anything you want to flag for further discussion when we return to things in the end of December and early January, we'll hit it by each department. Can we just make sure that this is updated when we, if the board approves,
Okay.
Mr. Potter's contract?
Okay.
Next Tuesday.
And so I'll just add that as one of the flags to update with the update TMO.
Excellent. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, the next budget, also on page 5, is the finance department. And while Kim Frost is making her way to the table, I would like to speak just briefly to the department head salary line item here. As you'll notice, what it shows is a 12.2% increase over last year. And I just want to assure the board that this is not an actual 12.2% increase for Kim Frost or for the finance director, who we very much appreciate. But this is kind of one of the downsides of a budget to budget comparison. We haven't had a finance director for 2 years. And at the time of the construction of fiscal 23 budget, we just had a placeholder in there that didn't necessarily reflect the cost to engage a new professional finance director. So we're sort of comparing what we anticipate compensation for our current finance director against a previous placeholder position.
Yep.
So while I can assure you that the same cost of living adjustment would be applied to the finance director, and that a new finance director would also be eligible for a step increase, the combination of the two is definitely not going to be a 12.2% increase for that individual. So it's just an increase over the placeholder budget that we had in fiscal 23. And with that, I want to turn it over to Kim to sort of discuss the rest of the finance department budget.
Thanks, Patrick. So you'll see that the total budget for the finance department is $353,150. There is a dollar change of $575, a 0.2% change from fiscal 23 budget. The major things, as you could see, is that there are payroll services of $12,000 that we are not budgeting in the finance department. That is something that has moved fully to HR within the last couple of months. So HR will be taking on payroll and all the costs that are associated with payroll. They were in the finance department last year. So that's why you see the big difference there for the 12,000. The bank service charges, we budgeted $1,000. It looked that way for many years. And as you could see, we have not spent that much. We do have an agreement with the bank that we bank with, that we really don't get any bank charges. We don't get any fees. So for the once in a blue moon that there might be something that pops in, we brought that down to 100. And then basically everything else stayed pretty static. So if there's any questions.
Board?
I don't currently have any questions.
Is the movement of payroll services to HR, is it 12,000 there, or is it, I was just trying to find it quickly.
The Kronos number.
It's the Kronos number.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the Kronos NIMRIC line, and I don't have that here I only printed my page.
But it's also a new fiscal year there, and it's going up in.
It's going up, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
So it's
Yeah.
12,000 plus a little bit more.
Yeah.
for-
yeah.
more than a little. All right,
Sally's gonna discuss that.
yeah, we'll let that go for now. Okay, Liz?
I'll talk about payroll with Sally. Thank you.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else. Pretty straightforward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Kim, you're going to come up a couple of different times this evening. You may, if you want to stay there, stay there. If you want to come back, that's fine. Either way.
You want me to just say, well,
You should, there are 2 or 3 other sections
Yep.
I'm going to ask you to speak to. So
okay,
it's up to you.
okay.
As we transition to the HR budget and ask Sally Nix to come up, I would actually like to say a couple of words about particularly the department head salary for the HR department, which relates specifically to our HR director. And it has a lot to do with what we were just talking about in the finance department, that being the responsibility of payroll.
Can I actually pause you for one second?
Of course.
So I just want to, Vice Chair Quip has just notified me, and I think it's important just to note for the record and for people who are following along at home. So the warned agenda has these items in a particular order. Patrick is taking them in the order that they are in the actual budget backup material, which I think is a much more logical way of going about it. So if you're trying to follow along here and you're wondering why we're going out of order, it's because we're going along by the numerical order in the backup material. Is that right? I believe that's right, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So the reason we didn't do town clerk first is because town clerk is on page.
It's the next page.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So, and, you know, if that causes confusion for anybody, you know, I think the board would be open to accepting a question on any of these items throughout the night.
Absolutely. Yes. No, I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure people were aware. Sorry, Patrick.
Sure. So just speaking to the payroll function within the town. So about a year ago, after we had begun the process of cleaning up our timekeeping using a program called Kronos, we began to realize with a little bit of disturbing frequency that we were getting payroll, we were having payroll errors. And this was brought to our attention by staff who were saying, hey, wait a minute, this isn't what it should be. And all too often they were right. We had a challenge in processing payroll effectively and correctly and reliably. And it was a bit of a problem. At the time, Peter and I didn't exactly know what to do. So we brought in some expertise. We asked our auditor to come in and take a look at the process. How are we doing this? What steps are leading to what steps, and where might these challenges be coming from? Our auditor, Bonnie Batchelder of Batchelder and Associates, gave us a report. It was a pretty simple report, but one of the things it said very emphatically is that payroll is not a finance function. In fact, the finance department should be a check on payroll. This was, I'll be honest, a little bit news to me, but I accepted her findings as legitimate. And not long thereafter, we hired a new finance director. And in the first week of the finance director's time here at the town of Brattleboro, the finance director asked me, why is payroll in the finance department? And shouldn't that be outside in the HR department? And so we started to take a look at different ways in which we could improve our systems. At one point in time, we were looking at hiring new staff in order to have a full-time person be responsible for payroll. That would have been, not impossible, but we would be before you asking for new staff at this period of time. We're not. We looked at one point going with a third party, like an ADP, and that would be pretty cost prohibitive. It would have been effective, I'm sure, but pretty expensive. Where we landed was in transferring the responsibility of payroll into the HR department, and it was going to be taken up as a full-time new responsibility for the HR director and the new HR assistant. That has happened. It happened some months ago, several months ago now, and we have had nearly flawless payroll ever since. So my big hats off to Director Nix and her staff. So in speaking to the HR director's salary increase, there are a couple of things going on here. Let's not forget that this particular individual is still new to the town, is owed a step increase along with a cost of living increase. And in addition to that, has been given an additional increase to compensate for what is a really significant additional body of responsibility. And a responsibility that has been taken up professionally and administered professionally, and we are all very grateful for the outcome there. I think, if the board's concerned, I don't know if you're concerned, one of the things that we've learned over the years is that when staff take on additional new responsibility, there should be some compensation. And so that's one of the reasons why this particular line item has been increased a little bit larger than anybody else is to provide for this additional responsibility. I will say that we are looking at staffing in the finance department. You'll notice that budget is coming in pretty flat. Part of that is because staff salaries are not going up nearly as much in the finance department as they are anywhere else. Some of that is due to what we anticipate will be some retirees. And there's some additional exploration that the finance director and I are doing at whether, particularly the two retirees that we see coming, which are today 2 FTEs, do they stay 2 FTEs in the future? And I think the finance director should be given a little bit more time to evaluate that and to evaluate the workload, but certainly there's been an adjustment to the workload in finance department, and there may be further opportunities for cost savings there related to the body of responsibility, which has been transferred to the HR department. So just a little bit of background, a little bit of heads up, and with the rest of that, I'd hand it off to Sally to talk about the rest of the department.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, everybody. Right, so as Patrick mentioned, there is some changes in the salaries. Again, the full HR budget is for fiscal 24 is 242,972, but that does include from going from one department to one full-time staff member to 2 in fiscal 23, and now hopefully 3 in 24. Then again, Kronos Nimerick, correct, does include taking on the payroll through Kronos. That included previously it included implementation, but there is a cost per employee and employees by payroll as well. And then I think my postage budget line has gone up as well, because I do now have to send out some mail when it comes to payroll or other incidentals. So, but I can get more on that if we have questions at the end, but I definitely wanted to just add a little bit of context to the budget, in particular with the HR department, with adding 1 new staff member. And I'd like to just give some highlights of what's been happening in the department, especially where I'm going to be talking about the communications coordinator position. Again, in the fiscal 23 budget provided the HR assistant, and I want to thank everybody for their support and the opportunity to add that position to the department. T started the position in July of this year, and he's added great value to the organization and the HR department. From his first day, he demonstrated trust and understanding, and he continues daily to contribute to the organization. He's wonderful to work with, and I thank him daily for being a part of our team, and I can't imagine the department without his continued support. Some relevant HR data, just to bring you to data on what's been happening in our department. Since January of this year, Town of Brattleboro has hired 66 new employees, not counting election workers, 31 full-time, 28 seasonal, 7 temporary or part-time employees, and that's today. And since January as well, we've exited 71 employees, 25 full-time, 41 seasonal, 5 temporary and part-time, and seasonal obviously come and go. Yeah, we're still going through that great, resignation process of, but then bringing them right on. And T has been helping to improve the HR onboarding experience. He's been adding extra customer support to employees as they're going through the Kronos onboarding application, which can be a little cumbersome. So he's been able to actually reach out and help them, which has been helping me not to have to spend so much time on the phone as well. And, the HR department, me and T and Seth, we meet weekly. We encourage each other. We have some laughs, and I'm honored to have an opportunity to collaborate with both of them. Since Patrick mentioned, T and I have been fully responsible for payroll and benefit implementation for all current and new staff since about September. We just completed open enrollment, which was a success. We've started new employee engagement by offering lunch and learns on a quarterly basis, which will include new employees and current that they're able to join to find out more about like Invest EAP and some financial wellness opportunities as well. And then we continue, of course, to grow and support our DEI incentives along with safety and wellness guidance. Earlier this year, the previous town manager did approve a temporary communications coordinator. For this position's lead role was to take on the new website and more. And the HR staffing line budget does include this position becoming a permanent full-time position within the organization. And I just want to give you some insight, which Seth did help me share. I know I don't want to spotlight too much on taking away from Seth being our coordinator, but he is really taking the charge with the website. And so he provided me some information on that. Again, Seth joined our team in July of this year as well, and he immediately started making improvements on promoting the organization on social media and collaborating with departments. He's an amazing teammate, and he brings experience and professionalism, and he addresses all that with kindness. He instantly started working with Edgeworks on the website, and every other week he meets with me, interim town manager Patrick Moreland, and planning director Sue Fillion for updates and development on the progress of the website development. Our communications coordinator has been meeting regularly with the web development company Edgeworks since July. The overall development will be happening in 3 parts, and he's currently nearing the end of what would be the first part of that process. Which involves working on the look and feel of the website. And he's currently been making appointments to meet with all department heads to discuss their particular tab or their page on the site. Edgeworks will soon be entering the second phase, which is coding. And this is where he calls it the fade to black phase, where they'll be kind of doing their part back there. This is where they'll build the website based on their mock-ups and the town's feedback from part 1, which is currently just closing out. The third and final part is the implementation. Edgeworks will provide training for select staff on how to use the website. The new website will launch next year. They're aiming to have it ready for the summer of 2023. The new website will have everything you might expect from the current website, but it will function on your computer, your iPad, or your phones. It has a search feature to find documents. It has accessibility features. And after it launches, people will try to go, people try to go to the old website, they'll be directed to the new website. We're really excited about this, the news section where all town departments can display information. The goal is to make it easier for the public to find information all in one place. The news section will look like a blog, and we can post press releases, photos, and updates from all the town departments. The website is coming along, but it will take some time before it's ready to launch and before the public is ready to see it. And again, we're aiming for about the summer of 23 for that to be able for public viewing. In addition, the communications coordinator will continue to create content for social media, including graphics, photos, and videos, and to help promote the work of the town. Seth has built an online presence through Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Our numbers go up every month or every week. Actually, I check with them every week, and all of our social medias. We have a goal of 2,000. We're getting closer. Each month he publishes a newsletter to inform the public what's happening, and you're able to subscribe. The public has a newsletter, and then he's also created an internal newsletter to help keep employees updated and better connected regarding our workforce. So thank you again for your time, and I'm happy to discuss any questions you might have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Sally. Board members, questions, comments on some interesting things.
Yeah.
Daniel?
I think Patrick's point earlier about the way in which the budget comparisons to the previous year is not always super helpful. So I'm looking at like actual FY22. So the overall budget for that department was 188,000 and some change. And the FY23 budgeted amount was significantly lower than that. So then that jump from 188 to 242, which makes sense to me, given an additional position, isn't quite as drastic as all that. Yes, sir.
One of the things that I would speak to in actuals for fiscal 22 in HR, which HR could never have predicted, is that is exactly.
Yeah.
Right. We had a town manager retire, and there was a fairly expensive contract that was included in that department that, you know, blew the personnel management expense all apart.
And our expenses for this most recent search, which we've happily almost concluded, are negligible.
Negligible. So the contract that the town had with I think it's called the Mercer Group, which is the company that Ellis Hankins, your consultant, is employed by, provided that should the search for the town manager prove unsuccessful, and by unsuccessful, you know, if it needed to be redone within a year, then there would be no additional expense beyond out-of-pocket expenses for the consultant. And so this most recent engagement with the Mercer Group and Ellis Hankins came without any additional fee. There was some travel expenses to bring Ellis up to the town of Brattleboro once, but they were fairly negligible.
I do have one actual question. So we heard a lot about the website project. Thank you for bringing that up. It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
When we first started talking about that. And
Still is.
yeah, it still is. And so we're currently in the look and feel phase of the project, and the look and feel part is really important for the community, right? Like one of the problems with our current website is the look and feel of it is bad. And also the experience of it is bad. And so I recall that we were interested in some kind of like public engagement process around building the new website. And I recall that Sue had some involvement with that. So is there something going on in that realm that you could update us on? Or if not, could we have an update on that at some point?
Yeah, I would probably want to talk to Sue, but I'm pretty sure that information from the community survey and town survey was shared with Seth. But I'll confirm that.
So there were a number of focus groups that Sue led. And I honestly can't recall exactly how many and over what period of time. There was I believe a survey of some sorts. There were a number of different user groups that were identified that created different users that would provide different feedback. That was gathered together and has been helping to shape the website as it has moved forward. But is it ongoing? I don't believe it is.
Right, because they were responding to the current website.
Yep.
So I think given that there was some feedback sought about our current website, it might be nice to look back to some of those focus groups and say, and
Sure.
here's what we've come up with so far.
Yep.
Does it?
So I'll be honest with you, I am the last person you want, designing your
That's
website.
fine.
But I would imagine there's probably an appropriate time in the life of a new website coming on board for that type of thing. And
Sorry,
ahead.
Patrick, but I don't think that that's the phase right now. I think as it
Right.
gets closer to deployment, there'll be some more time for input.
I guess I'm concerned that
design.
it sounded like we were in look and feel, then it was going to coding.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so like, presumably you'd want to kind of iron out the problems with the look and feel of it before you get into coding.
Sure, and I think that a lot of that information shared from Sue and the surveys taken is already been taken into consideration, but I can confirm and give some more information back on that.
We also, we could have Seth come and give
Yeah.
an update.
Sure.
This select board member would like a loop back to the focus group that provided the feedback.
Fair enough.
to the focus groups or necessarily to,
Well, Sue knows best probably who would be most useful to
okay.
talk to, but I think that
Would it be useful potentially, just as a suggestion? If we had a conversation with Seth and talked about him coming back to this board and doing maybe a presentation of
Yes.
kind of and having Sue maybe reach out to the folks who had been on those focus groups to say, hey, we're gonna try and do a little,
yeah,
pre-presentation. Would that be a good idea?
It's not fully recommended by EdgeWorks. There's reasons, and again, Seth can probably explain in much better detail than I am right now. I know he gave me the highlights of what they're doing, but he has much better understanding as to why they feel at this point, before this public, because I did think the same thing, like, let's bring them on, let's give a peek. And he's like, no, not yet. Like, their recommendation is to wait. But I'd be happy to move back in on the focus group and like maybe you mentioned if there's a way to have him at least come discuss more of it, but I'm not sure if he's able to actually display it.
So maybe we could have that conversation, get some advice from the professionals we've hired, and then come back to the board and say, hey, this would be what we believe to be the right and appropriate time. And this wouldn't be too late such that, new ideas would be, unwelcome.
Or tweaking, like.
yeah,
kind of-
I'm issuing feedback.
Yeah.
Not like throw it all out, but like, we gave you this feedback. This is how you've responded to it, but I gotta tell you, it still doesn't quite hit the mark. That kind of feedback.
Does that work for that select board member?
Does work for this select. board
Okay,
member.
excellent.
Would,
Do I, Liz, is this on this, or do I have a couple head nods from board members that they feel comfortable with that suggestion?
I feel comfortable with that. I want to talk about a different topic.
Okay. Yes,
uh,
Liz,
well, I don't know what
Oh.
that topic is, but
do you want to speak on this website discussion?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Liz,
I don't know,
can we?
Liz, what topic are you on?
Payroll.
Okay, do you want to talk?
Could mean a lot of things. So I'm wondering why our new employee is in HR.
The
The
communications,
coordinator?
Yes.
Communications, HR is communications, more of the employee engagement, including external and I believe when we discussed opening the position, it was like, where do we place this position? And I honestly volunteered and said, hey, why not HR? And just because of all the employee engagement and opportunities to provide, how to distribute that, like the newsletter, like who can develop this newsletter, and the communications coordinator can. And they get that information from HR, entering, exiting staff, what kind of programs we're working on. And it's just, in particular, this position has proven to add extra support to the HR department. He's
Okay.
been, can be a voice as well.
is there a department that you think it would be better suited for, Tim?
Well, as you know, this board was largely concerned with the state of our website and how the public interacts with our website, not necessarily the portions where it's internal communications, internal relationships. So that definitely sounds like a need on the, internal town side, but not necessarily addressing the need that this board wanted to be addressed initially. So it's just an interesting decision that the board wasn't involved with. And that leads me to my next sort of area that I would like to talk about, which is just give me a little more information. When did Seth start?
July of this year.
July of this year. Okay,
July
so
11th.
basically the fiscal year.
Correct.
And when is the website supposed to be done?
August, well, we're aiming for summer of 23. If that's July or August, I'm not sure. I believe the initial plan was development, it would take up to a year. And
right.
even though, we had probably selected Edgeworks prior, there was no one to take the charge of that.
Yep. I'm a little uncomfortable with the fact that this board, in the history of this board, we very much like to discuss and be involved with the acquisition of any new employees. We were very, very involved in the acquisition of our sustainability coordinator, for instance. It was quite a debate amongst this board. And then additional HR staff came on without really discussing this whatsoever. So I'm really looking forward to some sort of discussion about, first of all, since the additional HR staff, which you have already mentioned,
See,
we
Did discuss.
yeah, we did discuss quite a bit. However, the communications coordinator, we have not discussed at all.
I'm waiting till you're done.
Yep. So basically, that's where I'm going with this.
So I think that the discussion about the communications coordinator is basically beginning now, and we're going to flag it. It's a new position.
Yep.
That's because
Yep.
the communications coordinator position doesn't exist. It's right now we have a temporary employee who's basically partially been involved in rolling out the website project because it's a big deal and it takes a lot of work.
Sure.
And so like my question is, okay, so, we got budget discussion, you kind of have to ask the tough questions, like, so when Seth's done working on the website, in the sense of building it, does he have enough stuff to do to be employed full-time by the town of Brattleboro?
I mean, to point to what Tim was mentioning earlier, like the public outreach from that position, it's still well suited within the human resources department. Human resources touches every department within the organization, as well as the community with, our employees exude that reputation of the town. So Seth is involved in that position. If it were Seth or anyone moving forward, they're involved with every department. I mean, he's not in a silo, he's not just within HR. He meets with every department head and all the public outreach. He supports all that, and he's been meeting with committees and attending committees after hours and being part of that and getting more engaged with them. And then, coming back with feedback on what they're looking for from these committees on the website. So to help with that effect, the committees are giving him feedback and he's bringing that back, and, he's putting that into the mindfulness of this launch. But he's also someone's gonna need to maintain, I think Ian's mentioned that before, someone's gonna have to continue the maintenance of the website. And like Patrick mentioned, I don't know, I mean, all of our staff have wonderful skills, but that specific skill within a website, I don't know of anyone else within the organization that could take it fully. And I believe at this time, Seth, I have to check in on him and say, like, are you overloading your circuit? Like, how are you, what's your, because there's a lot coming in and a lot coming out of just that one person.
Yeah.
And the timelines that he sets on himself. And, again, just his professionalism within that role. I believe that he's adding a lot of value to how he can continue to support the town.
I want to be super clear and say that all the forward facing, the public stuff that I've seen Seth handling, I'm really impressed with. I'm really happy with the newsletter, all the social media stuff. But I'm uncomfortable turning this into a full-time position without any discussion before I see a website, because that's why he's there.
Oh, well, that's the new little bit on the end there.
No, I mean, that's a very important bit, because I don't think Seth would be with us if we hadn't decided that there should be somebody who's guiding us in the process of creating a new website. Therefore, that's why I'm very uncomfortable with approving another town employee, which adds to our budget, without seeing a website.
I want to respond to one element of the sort of like board's concerns that you spoke to. I'm just going to speak for myself. Like last year when we were talking about the website, one of my concerns was very much the like internal municipal like staff workings of the website, and that my understanding of how the website currently works is that individual department heads update their portions of the website, and there isn't any consistency. And no offense to any department head, but that's one of the reasons why it's kind of all over the place. And so, yeah, that internal organizing and one sort of person controlling it is like critical to it continuing to maintain and be consistent and have longevity to being something that's actually accessible and useful.
Yep.
So it's more than just like the website should be good for people to access and should be able to get on their phone.
Yeah. I just don't want to set up a culture in this town where basically our employees are driving a change in overall direction for this town and then coming to the board and asking for forgiveness. That's what it feels like to me. And so I really want this to be like the board is coming along for the ride as we develop a new website, and then we decide how much, maintenance and, upkeep that takes, and does that require another full-time employee?
Jess? Oh, and Patrick wants to say to me too. Jess
Go
first.
ahead, Jess.
Sorry.
All
Oh,
right. Still on this topic. I have a lot of similar feelings to Tim on this one. And that's also balanced with the idea that in our select board goals for this year, I know things have changed, but one of the things on our list was improving our digital presence and communications. And I think the creation of this position really supports that goal. And yet, however, without seeing something like a job description, it's hard to make a decision on that. Oh, you got it? Excellent, of course. And then also, big picture wise, for me, early discussions about this type of position were not just about digital engagement, but were about community engagement on a different level, getting people to show up at things and communicating what's going on to the community in ways that are accessible to them. Perhaps that's not always digital. And so I am interested in exploring if that is within this position or if it is a different thing that, you know, once we figure out our digital goals, we address those with this position and then think about something else. So
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you go first, Kim. No.
One of the things that Seth is also working on, though, is something that, you know, will benefit the community through the website, is making that ease of being able to pay by credit card, which was a big thing that came through with the public participation. And that is a huge task. I've been working with him on it, and it has been a very good experience to work with him. His way of vetting these different companies that we've had to go to try and get the best user experience. So when a resident comes into the town, that they can actually pay by credit card at the town clerk's office, at the finance office, at the treasurer's office, for whatever it is, the need that they have to, instead of going to like a kiosk in the hallway and be typing everything in. And that is all like a digital response need, you know, we need to update that kind of stuff. And he's working on that to get that interface with the website to the public, which is.
So I'm gonna have,
Well, just wanted to add, just to answer to Jessica, that there is, you know, there is, when his job, when this job description was created, it was also to include, you know, press releases, a lot of, you know, writing as well. And when we hired Seth, he brought that, he's a writer, he was in press, you know, and so he understands that, and we're getting there to the point where we're gonna give him more freedom into, you know, writing more for the town, for that public outreach as well, not just digital, but as engaging more that way. But because the website is taking such a, you know, first degree, this is the number one task to focus on. But just to add to what Kim says, Seth brings so much talent to his position, because you just ask him and he knows and he finds, and he's like a sleuth in there, you know, trying to get the best deals he can for us and meeting with everyone. I think, you know, the position, like I said, I do have the job description. I'm happy to share electronically with anyone that they'd wish. I can do that. And if it comes further, it was difficult, you know, we thought about bringing Seth here, but talking about a position with somebody in the room too could be a little difficult.
let's have, poor Patrick has been waiting to say something. I
Yeah.
apologize, Patrick.
No worries. And, you know, we've all been there in a moment of time where there's a community conversation about your employment, and it's challenging, but it does need to happen from time to time.
Yeah,
I guess what I wanted to say is I totally acknowledge that, you know, I think some of the points that Tim's trying to make, and that, you know, the bringing on of a temporary employee like this is pretty unusual, right? I haven't seen it happen prior. I know, thinking of the town manager at the time was that, well, you know, we need somebody to assist in the development of this new website. Let's see if we can find somebody who's got that specific skill set. And certainly Seth has that in spades. He's previously done, you know, large scale website redevelopment for, you know, groups of, I believe it was YMCA's down near Boston at some point in time. So, I mean, he's quite skilled in that regard. So it's a little unusual, but, you know, the concept at the time was, well, let's bring this person on. They can facilitate this. And in the process of providing additional support to all of the other departments, so as to be able to help them get their various messages out to the public, and to do so in a more timely manner, to do so in a more consistent manner, and to do so in a more attractive manner. You know, I'm not somebody who ordinarily places high value on all of those things, but I will say that the communications, and particularly the social media work that has been going on at the town since he has started with us, has been impressive, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback about it. I think I could say legitimately that the management staff think this has been a really good placement, and is a really useful tool for any of the departments. You know, for example, when there was a slideshow the other couple of meetings ago, and we're looking at the Rec and Parks project that was Seth. I mean, it was Carol's content, but it was Seth who, helped to put together a more attractive package to be able to deliver the message. I think you're going to end up finding yourself really happy with the website. At least the elements to it that I've seen all seem really well thought out and really focused on the end user's experience. And, his ability to support the departments to get messages out to the public in ways that I think the public are finding useful. I think we're just in our infancy of really figuring out how to best make use of these talents. We haven't had them for long. And, I think there's a number of new and exciting opportunities available for us having somebody on the staff with this type of training and background. So as to whether or not it continues as a full-time position is obviously the subject for debate, and please let us know how we can help.
So board, if we have more discussion on this now, I see Ricky's got their hand up, so I'm gonna pass it over to the public soon, unless someone wanted to speak on this one more time before. Yep.
I did, yeah. I'm glad, Patrick, that you kind of described this position as being in its infancy. Because
I see Liz.
it is. And I think it's really important that we have a skilled person to help shepherd the website project forward. And I also share some of my fellow board members' interest in what the position looks like going forward after that. I think, like if this person's a full-time employee, I'm sure some number of hours of their week will be dedicated to maintenance and, collaborating with the departments on that maintenance. And I would also like for there to be a consideration that additional community engagement, so it's a positions communications coordinator, and I would love it if you'd share that job description, and maybe we can also make it part of a packet.
Yeah, I'm gonna
later in the year, later in this process, because I think the town meeting members are going to want to kind of talk about this in a similar way to how we're talking about it.
Yep.
So having that information, that would be great. I want this position, at least when we were spitballing about it, and I think we did only really spitball and then it happened.
Yeah.
So this is why we ended up in this place right now. When we were kind of talking about it earlier in the previous budget cycle, there were different views on what benefit this kind of position could have for the town. And I'm of the mind that, yes, it's important for our digital communication to be good. And what I've seen is great, right? And in addition to social media communication being great, I want to see if we're able to improve the ways in which we interact with people in the town more generally beyond the social media realm. Because I think social media sometimes tricks us into thinking we're doing a great job because we did put something pretty out there, right? And it seems like we've done something great, but it's kind of a shallow thing sometimes. And so I'm also interested in some deeper engagement with the community moving forward. And I don't know whether Seth's skill set would kind of bring that about. Sounds like we'd definitely make some progress in it. But that's how I see this communications coordinator bringing value to the town. Maybe they wouldn't be doing that every minute of every day, but like some amount of their time each week helping us kind of really connect with the community in deeper, more meaningful ways that bring us more people wanting to get on committees, more people involved, more people wanting to do this kind of work, greater understanding, that kind of thing. And it's a lot to put on one person's head. And I don't think that it should just live on that one person's head, but somebody has to at least kind of spearhead it and collaborate with other folks.
Cool. Liz? Sorry.
That's okay.
You found it. I hear you.
I have no problem with this position being let on early before the website, because I think it takes a tremendous amount of effort that Seth is now doing to get all the details right. And, we've had problems in the past with certain departments' pages not having the most accurate information. And I think collaboration with the department heads will make sure that the information on the website is correct and user-friendly, and will, the work he's doing now leads to the work of the website, and I'm content. And if I could talk about the payroll now or later, it's up to you, Ian.
Let's just, let's hear Jess, and then I want to hear from Ricky because they've had their hand up for a bit and it may be on this issue. Jess.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, maybe I would be very comfortable with understanding this role through a communications plan or an outreach plan, that the select board would have an opportunity to give guidance on what our civic engagement and access to services sort of vision is. And this position maybe could present a year from now about what that might look like. I think that's what the sustainability coordinator did, right? After they were hired, they did present like a plan for what they were. Yeah.
So I think
Preferably before. It's really good.
I mean,
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing then is we're going to stick a flag in it, and we're going to either, I think that it makes sense to me that the board could discuss the job description and responsibilities of a new position that we are going to budget in the FY24 budget, and we could have input on that as policy setters, and that the current job description for this position be part of the backup material for that meeting where we're going to discuss it. And that could include something on the lines of how it would be checked in a year or in 6 months. Also in that discussion, we could talk about when, or if we even wanted to, depending on the relationship to the timeline of the website, and we can actually have an accurate understanding of exactly where the website is, because I appreciated Sally's update, but if we actually have Seth speak to it, maybe that would be helpful as well. We could hear sort of his perspective. So that's kind of where I'm feeling like we're landing on this position at the moment. And I want to try to make my fellow board member less uneasy. We can continue to discuss this position and, set a good precedent that we're going to really discuss it before we were to put forward a budget item to RTM with a new position in it that hasn't been, fully vetted.
Can I just ask for one piece of information?
For that meeting?
No, for this very discussion, very simple.
Yes.
Can you remind me what we spent on the website itself to Edgeworks?
70.
$70,000.
And it wasn't fully 70, right? It was like 40. And then there was the 30 above that was for, okay, there might be stuff we really like that we want to put into it. Is that my accurate? Yes.
Thank you.
Ricky. Sorry that took a while to get to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, yeah, no worries about that. I have two questions about human resources administration. At least two questions. About the first one being is when people, because like I've applied before and but I haven't applied recently to work in municipal administration in Brattleboro, and I was wondering if in the interview process, if there is any like emotional intelligence screening or like relationship skills testing for employees.
Not sure how relevant that is to the budget, Ricky.
Well, we're talking about Sally Nix's salary, right? And she's the human resources manager. And so I'm asking her about how she performs her job.
Do you feel comfortable speaking to that question, Sally?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Those tests usually require a fee. So I would say that no, we don't. We have, when applicants apply for a job with the town of Brattleboro, there's a questionnaire in lieu of a cover letter, which we developed and we update frequently, and it includes those type of questions are asked in there. And then interview questions, we do screening. Typically a job, after you apply with your questionnaire, depending on what position you're applying for, there's a screening interview, and then there's an oral board interview. And a lot of those questions come up with getting to know the person through the interview processes that we do. I'm not sure if that's helping answer your question, Ricky, but.
So you're saying you don't see any value in trying to budget for some more formal, like psychologically accredited test?
We do tests, we do what we refer to as an MMPI, and those tests are provided to police officers and dispatchers, and those are psychological assessments.
What does that acronym stand for?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'd have to Google that one, but it's MMPI, I believe 2. And that's a questionnaire that takes about that all, again, police officers, even the animal control officer and our dispatchers have to take. And that's part of their prerequisites of employment.
I think that stands for the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. Does that sound familiar?
That sounds right, Ricky. Thank you.
And
Here, Ricky, what's your second question?
I was just about to ask it.
Perfect.
And do employees, when they're hired, receive any training about ADA accommodations, especially with service dogs?
Not specific training. We do respectful workplace training, but and then we also have the IDEA committee, which is the DEI's committee, and that includes all a representative from each town department, and that they're on a term cycle, so that changes, the members change, and there are specific conversations, and we bring in speakers regarding those topics. We're actually going to be, we're inviting someone. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna, the name is, I'm fading on the name, but someone's going to be joining our committee in January to talk specifically about ADA.
What organization is that person affiliated with?
I can email it to you, Ricky, if you'd like. I know I have your email. It is a Vermont organization, and I'm blanking on the name right now. I wasn't prepared to discuss it.
So,
Okay,
no, I have some more questions.
I'm gonna give you just one more, Ricky, and then we're gonna move on. Okay.
I don't think that you should rush ADA questions. Like this is what this meeting is for, to ask about how the budget is spent with the human resources.
No.
So I may have a few
it's probably about
follow-up.
Let's hear your next question, and then
The more you interrupt me, that's the more time you're taking away from me asking questions and distracting me and making me interrupt.
I just have another person with their hand up, Ricky. So I'd like to.
There's a lot of people that want to talk, and I should have 2 more minutes at least.
Okay.
Thank you. So, is Sally saying that there was no like previous ADA representative doing any ADA training with the employees?
Not so, I mean, we do town-wide training when it comes to like respectful workplace and, but not specific ADA. But like I mentioned, we are bringing someone to speak to the committee in January. We've invited 2 guests.
And is she, or are they going to offer service dog training to the employees?
I don't believe so, Ricky. I think that position would more rely maybe on our animal control officer, but I don't know if I'm able to.
Are you saying that the animal control officer has been offering the municipal employees ADA training on service dogs?
We're not discussing the animal control officer right now.
No, we're discussing the budget, and I'm wondering how the budget is spent and if there's any money being spent on ADA training for municipal employees, because I want to know how much money is being spent. How much money is being spent on the person that's coming in January?
They're doing it free of charge.
So let's have.
So how much money in the budget is being spent on any ADA training for the municipal employees? Has it been 0? And it's going to stay 0?
Is the I'm not sure what the term was you used. Respectful workplace, does that include ADA or not?
It could, I mean, it's
Okay.
a broad range of topics. Respectful workplace includes, sexual harassment and others, working with people with disabilities is a big portion of it.
And is that
That would
element,
probably be more to the personnel management expense line. A lot of our in-town training would either come out of personal management expense or it comes out of occupational health, depending on what type of training we're offering.
so I think then the answer to the question, Ricky, is it's an element of the $20,000 that's budgeted for the FY24 budget from personnel management expenses, but it's not itemized for like specifically ADA or sexual harassment or any other.
Correct.
I think like considering having an ADA itemized budget would help really reflect how much we value ADA training. And I would like to know like how much time is actually required for municipal employees to spend specifically on ADA training and have that be really transparent. Because if we're going to say we're inclusive, like we should prove transparently about how we are doing that.
Okay.
It's part of our safety and wellness committee as well. These all, again, the townwide training programs, and they can vary. We're going to be offering a pronoun training through the idea committee soon as well to all town staff. We do cybersecurity training. But again, it's also that would fall more in line of our safety and wellness. And we make those efforts.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ricky. I'm going to move on to I cannot read that one. Oh, it's Dick DeGray. You're not unmuted yet.
Hey, thank you. If I ask a couple of questions that are redundant, please bear with me. I just got tuned into the meeting. What is the salary line item for this position that you're talking about?
It is grouped in with one other salary line item under staff salaries. So it is the increase to 51. Is that accurate?
The increase of 51.
The increase of
Yep, it's
51,790.
line 2 in the human resources budget.
Yep,
So it's what, a $51,000 line item?
correct.
No,
Oh.
Does that,
No, it's not. It's not. Sorry, it's not a $51,000 line item. It's a $51,000 increase to the second line item, staff salaries, because there's already a staff member in staff salaries for HR who is not who already we approved last year at RTM.
and does that include salaries and benefits? And
Yes.
benefits?
No benefits. Oh,
benefits are
no,
elsewhere in the budget.
benefits are elsewhere.
So it's not a $51,000 increase. It's higher than that.
Not in the HR budget.
In the
Overall budget.
In the yes,
So when you're advertising the position, you're advertising a position that is potentially $65,000 a year or higher.
No.
It's very misleading when you say the position is only $51,000.
That's what the
I,
employees
I,
are.
we,
employee.
Dick, we haven't said it. We actually haven't said a number yet. We've just been talking about the position itself. So
Okay.
you just asked about where in the HR budget we were discussing. So that was what I
Yeah.
was speaking to.
How many other towns our size have a communications director?
I don't know the answer to that.
There's a few. I can get the number. They have different titles, but they're along the same lines. I'm on a HR email group that I can reach out to, but I can get that information.
Did you hear that, Dick?
Yeah, I heard it. That would have been good information to have, talking about other communities that have this. I mean, some of the things you're talking about, having the ability to use credit cards, that's something that you can use him for to set that service up. We don't need an ongoing person to monitor once we have the ability to pay for credit cards. And then how many press releases are we doing a year?
How about today?
Yeah, I don't actually have a sense for
I
that.
don't have a number. I believe they come out of the town manager's office the most.
Probably
Or-
about 10 a
You know,
week.
they,
I would
they
think.
come out of every
department.
department, you know, we could do some research and,
So
you know, just one of the things I want to mention is, you know, this position is attempting to be responsive to needs identified by this board. So we need to make sure that it is responsive to the needs identified by this board. And so I think it makes sense for this board to, you know, take a deeper dive and take a look at the job description and what have you. But I certainly hope you don't feel as if we're thrusting this upon you.
no.
No.
Yeah, and Dick, I think that both the other towns who have positions like that information and maybe even how many press releases we put out a year or something, those will all be very helpful for consideration when we discuss this item again, which is something that we were talking about earlier, and I'm not sure if you were on the meeting for that.
No, I wasn't, and I
Okay.
certainly think that would be beneficial. I think one of the things that needs to be remembered, we have one of the highest tax rates in the state of Vermont. And so adding a staff person should be considered very carefully, because it is a residual effect on the budget. It's not a one-year hire. And if the person leaves in a year or two, then you're going to fill the position again. So there is a residual impact on the budget. And so there needs to be careful consideration that what you're going to get for the amount of money that you come up with is worth the expenditure. And from what I've heard at this point, I certainly don't agree with it. And I understand what your goals are, but the fact of the matter is that we have sufficed, and it hasn't been a hardship on the community. And I certainly don't believe it's been a hardship on any of the departments getting a press release out. It's not like they're doing, 5 or 6 a day. So I really hope that there's a really healthy discussion, and I certainly will be paying attention to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dick. All right. I see one more hand, and then we're gonna move on. Martha.
Actually, it's Marta.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading it from such a distance.
Yeah.
I
Just wanted to
apologize.
correct. Yeah,
Marta.
so I just need to put my hand up because what I just heard, I think, was possibly off tone for me. Like, for instance, just in this meeting, just to talk about the need for a communications director, I follow things in the town pretty closely. I'm at virtually most select board meetings and other committee meetings, and I'm on RTM, and I read the paper every day. And just in this communication in the last 30 minutes, somebody mentioned that somebody's been doing a town newsletter and I don't know about it. I'd love it. I'm working really hard to help aggregate information from around town to spread out to people I know who aren't quite as into spending a lot of time figuring out what's going on in the town. So for me not to know there's a newsletter probably illustrates a need for this kind of communication dissemination.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. I'm just going to Liz, you want to speak on something else on the, yes, my last thing on this is I just want to mention too, I hear board members' concerns about it being focused on social media. I hear concerns about, making sure that we don't move forward with this before the website is done. The one thing I will just remind all of my board members is that with COVID and our moving so much of our stuff online, that the accessibility and municipal fluency, and most importantly, our transparency is so much connected to how people access the documents that we have on our website. And I don't want to lose that, agenda items when we discuss really important things. Sometimes the only way someone knows about that is either they get it emailed to them, they find it on the website, or they run into a select board member on the street and we tell them about it. So these are really critical elements to people being able to access our municipal government in the way that it's supposed to be, where they can speak on items that are being discussed in open meeting. So let's not lose that when we're like talking about why Facebook is bad, because I agree that there's plenty to be said for that, but like also there's a big, you know, element here that I don't want to lose. Yeah. So on that, Liz.
Thank you, Ian, and I agree with that point. It's very important. I just want to hearken back to, many minutes ago when we were talking about payroll. And it's a really difficult thing, and I think really expensive to try and recreate the knowledge base of all the employee contracts and so forth. And luckily for us, happily, Sally was willing to take this on and correcting a problem that's been dogging town government for quite some time. And I applaud her willingness to take on this task and to doing such a good job. It's really difficult to make sure that every employee is coding their time sheets properly. It sounds, picayune, but it's really important, and she's doing us a valuable service, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Liz.
Can I just
Tim?
add on to that? And because earlier when there was a little discussion about, well, it's strange, Kim said, well, why isn't that being balanced by checking through the finance department? It's because we didn't have an HR department until very recently,
Right.
in my opinion. I mean, because it's only been a few years now.
3 years.
Yeah.
little over-
So that's why it didn't exist in HR payroll, that is.
Were you surprised when it moved to HR?
No.
Okay.
No.
So because it was
Yeah.
apparently something, okay.
The minute an employee starts onboarding, we're connecting with that person. So, and like Liz mentioned, the contracts, we have a complete understanding of all of that. So.
Yeah.
Just wanted to, because some people might be listening like, well, why didn't HR have it for years?
Mhm.
Because we didn't have
Didn't have
HR.
Right.
Okay.
For how many employees?
140-ish.
I would ask HR.
150 strong.
150 strong. And we've
Yeah.
had an HR
And
department
climbing.
for 3 years.
Possibly.
And what?
And
And
climbing.
climbing possibly. Or maybe,
It's a
or maybe
temporary
not.
position.
We will have a healthy, robust. discussion.
FTEs, right?
It's pretty
Yeah.
amazing to me to see the number of things that HR is taking on and taking responsibility for, and thinking back to prior to having an HR department. That was coming out of the town manager's office, and it was not being done effectively. So
Mhm.
it really wasn't.
If you do say so yourself.
Throwing Peter under the bus there.
I've been part of this department for 12 or almost 12 years, and
It would be tough
thank
for-
goodness we've got some good professional HR.
Absolutely.
Because, we are a modern employer today in ways that we were not, just 3 years ago.
Daniel.
Ian, thank you. I just want to kind of come back to, so Dick had some questions about the position. That's fine, totally appropriate. In the town manager's budget message on page 6, it says, I propose creating a full-time permanent communications coordinator position and including $45,536 for that position in the FY24 budget. So that number is correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's the answer to Dick's question of
Great.
how much is this person being paid?
Yep.
Like, that's the salary, benefits are separate and, accounted for in the benefits section. I just wanted to put it out into the record so that that question could be answered. And then I want to ask something which is not germane to this topic, and it's a request in response to Dick's thing where he said one of the highest tax rates in the state. So I would just like to see that as a fact. I'm sure it would require some work on somebody's part. I'm assuming there's a list of tax rates by community
Yeah,
from the Vermont Department of Taxes.
Yeah.
And Brattleboro is the 8th largest municipality by population. So I'd expect
7th?
us to be 7th or 8th in the tax rate race as well. And if that is what it turns out to be, then I'll sleep easy. And if it's different, then I'll know that. But I just like to know a fact about it rather than hear an opinion.
it's a little complicated, but certainly we could get more facts,
Yeah.
because there's all the balance of whether you have professionalized police, fire,
Yeah.
whether you have.
Well, I mean,
know.
those larger municipalities are gonna have those kinds of services.
Yep.
And it costs more to run that kind of town.
Love budget discussion.
We can put together some information.
Thank you.
It's not the first time that's been asked and
I bet not.
we'll update.
But not cherry pick. I'd just like to see a list.
Sure.
My only other request from the public discussion is, can we get Marta or Seth in contact with Marta? Ray, the press or the press release, or not the newsletter. Cause I'd be curious, cause I definitely know Marta and that
Oh, sure.
they're very engaged. So I'm surprised that they haven't heard about it. So
It might be on the town news, the town website now, but I'll ask them to throw out a social media blast.
Yeah.
Some forms so that people can know where to sign up.
yeah, and I'm assuming they put their email in and then they can get. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, we're at 229 members, so she'll make us 230 or more.
there we go. And yeah, so it's on the website, right? That's what you said? Yeah,
I'm
well,
sure
there we
there's
go.
There's a place.
You
to
go
look.
down 3.
Yeah, it's gonna be a difficult, search, but I'll have them blast it out for us.
Okay, perfect. So am I passing it back to Patrick?
you.
If we're done with HR,
Was there anything else, Ford?
No,
We
I've said.
beat you up enough.
Yeah, I think we beat that to a pulp.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff there.
Sally, thank you very much for the presentation.
No problem. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
And we'll see you again when we discuss this
Thank
Look
you.
forward to it.
later.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Kim has to stay because you have more.
she has
You're gonna direct.
more work to do.
Okay. What are we moving on to?
We are moving on to attorney, which is near the top of page 6.
Where is that?
Is that even on the warning? I don't even see that.
Well, I would call it under other.
Okay.
Other topic.
Other topic.
I
This
wouldn't
approach is really stressing me out.
want to make sure
I
I
don't
cover
read it.
absolutely everything. So, this is other. The attorney contract, well, it's 3 line items long. 2 of them are funded. One is the annual contract we have with Fisher and Fisher to provide town attorney services. And then there's also $1,000 for memberships, conferences, this sort of thing. Ordinarily, what that's used to cover is updates to the Vermont statutes. They provide little supplementary updates as laws change, and so there's a combination there. It is going up to $118,118, an increase of $22.96 or 2%.
I'm seeing 117.
Talking about the
total
overall
budget.
line.
Oh, the
Overall,
118.
overall.
Oh, okay. Thank
Yep.
you. Sorry.
Where are you?
Right there.
We're in attorney.
Page
Yeah,
6.
we're on page 6 under attorney.
Oh, I went to 6, sorry.
Okay, board members? Questions?
Thanks, Bob.
Hmm.
And actually, thanks Fisher and Fisher, because it's not just Bob.
Yeah, it's his office, but I think we basically just work. We don't really use.
Yeah,
Sometimes we do.
Bob's our primary point of contact. We have done some work with Michael McGillian out of his office, and I believe there are other attorneys there
Yeah.
who help out in various capacities. Bob pretty much runs the show for us, and we appreciate his services.
Tim?
Sorry for that sound that came with that gesture. 2%, where'd that come from? Is that contractual?
It is not contractual. He has got a year-to-year contract. It's consistent with past practice.
So he himself doesn't look for COLA that adjust year after year?
That is just cool.
He hasn't specified.
Okay.
And each year, we haven't necessarily asked him. We've offered him a 2% increase, and he's greatly appreciated it.
I think 2% is fair.
Liz?
Excellent.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
Sure.
I've worked with Bob a lot over the past year and I appreciate his services, and the town should be very grateful for his good service all
Yeah.
year.
We get good value.
Bob, you don't really fully understand the value of Bob Fisher until you work on the select board and understand how much he gives above and beyond, I think. So,
Yeah, and putting aside Bob, and I'm Bob's biggest fan, but this particular engagement is so valuable for the town. He provides office hours here in the municipal center twice a week, but he's available to us pretty much all day, every day. I spoke to him numerous times on the telephone today. We'll see him here tomorrow. We get a lot of value for our engagement with Fisher and Fisher, and his involvement with the town is absolutely indispensable piece of organizational memory as well. So a lot of value there.
Yeah, and I want to just speak to, I think this came up last year at RTM. Somebody kind of questioned this article. Because I think it's an article, right?
It's an article that so each year, the budget, the attorney budget in the general fund is just part of the general fund. The select board has to appoint a town attorney, and it's the responsibility of representative town meeting to ratify that appointment,
Yeah.
just as they do a town clerk. And there's one other, town treasurer.
Yeah, I don't think it's not a budget amount approval. It's a
It's the
appointment
actual
approval. Yeah.
So yeah, I just think that having gotten to work with Bob quite a bit on the board, yeah, it's just not only does it ensure that we are protecting the town from liability, which is in the taxpayers' interest, because when we have lawsuits, we pay money for that. But also it's ensuring that we're following the law, that the select board and our municipal staff are following statutory and charter rules, and that's an important part of governance. And having Bob on retainer, we probably would pay a lot more money hourly if we were to, for the amount of time that we use it. It'd be actually kind of fascinating to know how much we were to.
No, we don't need to know.
We don't need.
That'd
We
be
do not
crazy,
need
yeah.
to.
So, yeah. So I see Ricky and those other board members. Ricky? Yes.
How many lawsuits have been made against the municipality this year?
This year?
Yes is the question.
I don't know.
We do not know the answer to that, Ricky, but we can get that answer for you.
Well, like, I'm disappointed that Mr. Fisher isn't here to answer questions about his position from the public and like elected representatives like me for District 8. And because I have a lot of follow-up questions that I'm guessing you also all are not aware of, that only he is privy to, what should become public knowledge.
Well, Mr. Fisher is not elected. We are. So you could always direct questions to the select board and we could direct them to Attorney Fisher if we see that's appropriate.
I mean, you could do that with all of the other employees as well, but all the other employees that are presenting their budget lines did come.
Not an employee.
Yeah, but yeah, Attorney Fisher isn't an employee.
We're paying him.
Correct. He's a contractor.
There's a contract with every employee.
Well, either way, so Ricky, up to you. If you want to ask those questions that we're probably not going to be able to answer.
I want him to come to a meeting for these to be publicly asked questions.
Okay, he'll be, I think he'll definitely be at RTM for the, so as we were just discussing, Ricky.
RTM isn't the place, like, do you think our RTM is the place to ask him those questions too?
I don't know what your questions are.
I mean,
Well, like, how many
what-
lawsuits has he defended against the municipality this year versus other years?
So do you want to ask, so Ricky, do you want to ask your questions? We'll write them down and we'll have Attorney Fisher respond to them.
Well,
Email.
I
me.
would rather
or
ask
do
him directly, because I would like to have a conversation with him that's not filtered through you. I'd like to speak for myself.
I'm not sure then what you'd like to do then.
Why would I like to do that? Because you
No,
do
not why. I'm not sure what you would like to do then, because we don't have Attorney Fisher here. So I'm happy for you to propose to ask the questions, and then we can have those questions answered for you by Attorney Fisher. That's kind of the option I've got for you.
Back to another select board meeting before to answer questions before RTM.
I don't, unless we flag something out of the attorney contract, I don't think we're going to bring this item up again before RTM.
I just don't really think that's fair to the public to be trying to hire someone with over $100,000 salary and not have them be able to confront the public to answer questions directly himself.
Daniel has a proposal.
So Ricky, if you wanted to just read your list of questions right now, they'll be in the public record. People who are in this meeting, people who are watching on TV will know what your questions are. Our minutes will reflect them, and we could ask Bob those questions. He can do his best to answer them. And he can respond to you directly if you would like that response to be public. I don't know. I mean, maybe it could be in the backup material or something.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I kind of understand where you're coming from. Like when I've been through budget seasons in the past, sometimes I've used it as an opportunity to dig into the operations of each of these departments, right? You have questions about like what's going on. And, you know, I get it, but it's also like when you have many detailed questions about operations, we may not have an answer right at our fingertips. Certainly we won't, because we're not the operations people, and Patrick may need to consult with a department head about it. And even the department head may not have an answer to that specific question in the moment. But by all means, ask the questions. I've sometimes found when I've had a bunch of like pretty detailed questions, I've like emailed the town manager's office and asked them to share them that way, so that they have some time to like take a look at what you're asking and do the research to give you an answer.
So
I would like him to give a public report about what are the types of law cases that he's had to defend the municipality for the last year.
okay,
Thank
you.
That's it.
thank you. Liz.
I'd just like to point out that there's a difference between defending the town against lawsuits and preventing lawsuits from occurring.
Yes.
Also true. All right. So anything else on the attorney line items?
Ian,
Yes,
does that mean this line item is gonna get flagged? So
It's up to
when
the
we come
board.
Back to it.
do you want to?
Honestly, as this is only my second year doing the budget thing, I would be interested, like Daniel said, in just learning a little bit more about how that relationship functions and what that role is and what that investment's about. I wouldn't, yeah, I would love to hear from Bob about all the awesome stuff that he does for this.
So I have been kind of operating the flagging of items on the budget as not like a thing requiring 3 votes, but something that just each board member can bring up something. So flagged, Ricky. So that answers the question as to addressing this. We'll have Bob respond to that question, and then when we comes up later in the budget discussions, you'll be able to be here and Bob will be here. So can we tackle one more in 5 minutes before we break?
Depends on what it is.
You asking me? Yes,
Absolutely.
let's do it.
That would be the town clerk, Hillary Francis.
Town clerk.
5-minute one?
Yeah.
Not a 5-minute one.
She's a
Come on.
I was
gonna be
sitting there
great.
nodding my head.
No way.
So we can do.
Let the record reflect.
Good evening. So you all know my department and what we do, but for the sake of the community who might not be quite as intimate, I'd like to just give a little bit of background as to who we are and what we do. So we're a small staff. We're 2 full-time staff, including myself, and 1 part-time staff member. We perform a variety of services for the public, including vital records. So we record and issue certified copies on a daily basis, and we restore and preserve those records forever. Land records, we record, preserve, and issue copies. We issue marriage licenses. We issue liquor and entertainment licenses and permits, and new this year, the state is having us do tobacco licenses as well, which the board will start seeing more of. We issue dog licenses. We sell cemetery plots. I think one of the things that we're well known for is running elections and dealing with the logistics of representative town meeting. We also staff a few committees. The Board of Civil Authority, which you all sit on. We handle property tax assessment appeal hearings.
elections and apportionments. The Board of Abatement, which the Select Board also sits on, handles abatement requests and hearings. And then we staff the Cemetery Committee, which Jane Fletcher staffs for our department. And that committee is an advisory committee to the Select Board. So that's sort of what we do in a nutshell. And looking at our budget specifically, as many of you know, every other year is a bigger election year, where we have the town meeting elections in March, as well as representative town meeting. We have state primaries in August, and we have the general elections in November. And then every other year is, we call an off election year, where it's just town meeting day and representative town meeting, other than maybe some special elections that come up. So in the off election years, our election salary or our election expense budget goes down by $6,000. And our record preservation budget goes up by $6,000, so we can continue to preserve those records that we need to keep forever. And so the budget that we're discussing is an off election year, which will, so you'll see the $6,000 increase in the records restoration and a $6,000 decrease in election expenses. Beyond that, our budget is pretty straightforward, pretty steady. The only real increase that you'll see, aside from the COLA increases for staff salaries, is postage expense. And that was looking back at 2022, the actual that we had, which was $3,864.08. Considering the increase in postage expenses, as well as whether it's an on or off election year, we're mailing more and more absentee ballots, so our postage expenses are going up. Beyond that, I don't really have any changes. Again, it's a pretty steady budget, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Hillary. Board members, questions, comments?
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you for explaining that, how that $6,000 moves from election expenses to records. That's really interesting. I am curious about something that came through my email many a month ago from RTM.
Okay.
They were interested in sending out an informational postcard to town residents about town meeting day. And they felt like it would be a difficult ask to make an ask of the town to spend that kind of money on mailing a postcard out. But they felt like maybe it was important to help citizens really understand what these weird March election happenings were. Did you give any consideration to, did you hear about that? Did you give any consideration to that when you were making your budget?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And the last question was, is there any wiggle room in case RTM members feel like that's an important thing to do again this year?
So I remember when the steering committee brought that up, they had talked about it, they designed a postcard, and then they decided not to move forward with it. The steering committee had voted against it. And so it's not something that I considered because it was never brought to us. It would probably, well, with postage expenses, my guess is to mail to every household would probably be upwards of $4,000. And so if you all want to add that to the elections budget to do, I'm more than happy to work with folks from RTM to design something like that and do that. It's not currently budgeted for.
Yeah, okay.
And I would need to look further into an exact amount of what that would be. I don't want to just throw out $4,000 because
Right.
that's a guesstimate.
Other questions? Liz?
Well, I'd just like to say to Hillary, keep up the good work. And about the project that Jessica was discussing, we talked earlier this meeting about all the new expansive communication that's going on. And I think that, you know, that employee can do a great service of communicating to the public what RTM is all about without a postcard.
Daniel?
My recollection of oh my Lord, how do I know this? So there's like a list of RTM members on the town website.
Mhm.
And on that list, it does have email addresses. So thinking about like, you know, Martha didn't know about the newsletter. Is it possible or even desirable to like communicate with at least the RTM members who we have email addresses for and say, hey, this is a town newsletter. Here's how you sign up. And I know that that's kind of bleeding, you know, from one thing into another, but just because, you know, if I caught the postcode conversation right, it's like that was an attempt by that steering committee to communicate with the wider community that like RTM's happening, you can get involved. But like RTM members are representatives, right? And in theory, like can talk to their neighbors about like what's going on. So like each one of those members could be communicating like, hey, the town has a newsletter that's just started up. Hey, here are also like some other ways to connect with the town so that we can kind of have a ripple effect of getting more information out there, which may achieve the goal perhaps of that postcard effort somewhat.
Yeah, I'll speak to, yeah, I'm just thinking like process here for, like, we don't speak for RTM. And very clearly the RTM steering committee withdrew that recommendation for the postcards. So I think the best that we can do as far as like providing a budget for RTM's consideration is to, you know, have had this discussion, have an understanding that it's like $4,000, give or take, not gonna quote you exactly, on if they wanted to send out postcards. And then RTM could increase the budget by $4,000 and direct that $4,000 increase is for sending out postcards, I guess, right? Would that be the way to do it?
So a couple of thoughts that come to mind.
If like if they didn't have a steering committee or anything, like if they actually wanted to do that.
Well, we could.
So if RTM wanted to do something, so RTM wouldn't be able to determine it wanted to do something until it convened.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
And
saying.
then, so it wouldn't know what its message is. It couldn't
that's a good
determine a message until such time as it convened to say, we wish to convey this to the people,
Yeah.
right?
So maybe it would be like for the next RTM.
that we're making a budget for.
So I would also,
Yeah.
not to be complicated, but I'd also like to
I
have
see
a
you,
quick
Liz. I hear you.
conversation with Mr. Fisher as to, you know, what types of information can be sent out and by whom and what, you know, thresholds they want to. So for example, you know, a select board member can't speak for the select board. The select board comes together and can put out a message. And we don't, you know, typically mail out the select board's message. We could,
Mhm.
we could take better advantage of, you know, digital options available to us. If we wanted to increase the budget so as to be able to have the capacity, if in fact we find that we can potentially make use of it in a meaningful way, we can do that.
Or we can realize that this is a silly discussion at this point and move on.
Liz had a comment.
Liz?
I just want to remind everybody that this committee rescinded that request before they disbanded themselves out of existence. So there's no there. And I agree with Tim.
I don't even remember the postcard in question, so I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I think the there was that folks other than the select board, elected officials, elected representatives, we're acknowledging that there is a need for communication to town members about civic engagement opportunities. That was specifically for RTM. But
But they
anyway, it
decided
brought up the
not.
question-
What
It brought up
was,
the question for me about availability of funds when there is an important election need for communication or need for engaging the public in knowing that something is happening. For example, if we ever had to have a special election or a special RTM.
But there are special postcards that go out when there is special elections, right? There's a limited budget for that kind of communication.
Yeah, I would say, I've heard of it happening before. It hasn't happened. Like, there was one year that we had a number of special elections. We didn't send out postcards. We did things like, make posters and put them up at any business that would let us put them up. So we went around and basically posted the town in addition to traditional media and social media and sandwich boards
yeah,
out. And so we've done that. My take on postcards, they'll be effective to a certain extent, and then they'll be junk mail to another certain extent. Especially if it's around election time and if people are getting their campaign materials right there. Some people look at them, some people don't. And so, I mean, it's strategic, I think, where you want to put that strategy, and
Yeah,
I'm open to.
I think one other piece of that for me was if we do have a communications position, giving them a little bit of something to work with. And I don't know whether that's within department budgets to support department needs and initiatives and communications or within the HR department. But it did also come up at an idea meeting that you can't just spend money on communicating something. It has to be planned for and in the budget.
yeah. Patrick?
Yes, sir. I just would say in the time that I've been with the town, I've seen, I think, one or maybe two times where the select board said, oh my God, there's an urgent piece of information. We need to get it out to the public and we need to get it out by mail. And we've proceeded. There's no specific line item in any of the budgets for that. It was a need that the select board felt was urgent, and so we responded and we addressed it. The one time that really comes to mind is and there was a lawsuit that followed on this, by the way.
Yeah.
But we sent out some information about an article that was on the ballot that had been moved forward through petition. And the select board felt that there was some information that the public needed in prior to casting their vote. And so, information was mailed out broadly. And should something like that happen again and the board say, this is something we need to do, we'll find a way to make it happen.
Daniel?
I think it's interesting how this kind of circles back to the communications coordinator position, right? And so like perhaps in talking with Seth, who is in that position right now, we could communicate our interest in elections messaging and, find out like what is possible through the position that is currently there. It sounds like the town clerk's office has done a lot of work in the past about like engaging people around elections that really just falls in the staff salaries, right? It's like,
Well, it falls into, and as well as just election expenses.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not seeing like a need for an additional amount of dollars here or an additional line. And I think it actually speaks to some of the benefits of the communication coordinator position.
Okay. I'll open up to the public. unless board members have other discussion. Liz?
I just want to say I agree with Daniel because I said some things very similar 10 minutes ago.
I
Well,
must have like picked it up.
Ricky?
I was on the steering committee and I remember the budget we came up for the postcard being less than $3,000, and like I was not part of like actually configuring that, so I don't know how they came up with that formula at all. So I also had asked if at least if the representatives could be sent the meeting schedule of the select board about all of the budget meetings we're having now in preparation for RTM, because I saw like one was sent to me after I asked for it, because like I didn't even know that existed until I was offered it from Jessica. And so like I did post that on my government official Facebook page to try to show people, but it's like it wouldn't be effective for me to email that to all of the district representatives because a lot of them think that my email is spam because I have links in it that hyperlink to, like in my email signature, that hyperlink to other things I'm working on, and they don't the feedback from what I understand from them is that like they think that because I use the indigenous address too of One Tuskaka Dakina that like they think that's spam too. So if there could be like an official administrative employee who is responsible for sending the dates of the preparatory budget meetings for RTM, I think that would be really effective for getting them more involved in these meetings so that they're more prepared at RTM, because I think a lot of them, from what I understand, seem confused about the whole process, and they don't necessarily want to subscribe to Jessica's email list of updates of all of the meetings, of all the committee meetings that happen all the time, but like just a focus, if they could get that focus list of these budget meetings and have that scheduled between now and March, that could be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. Yeah, I think that's a good point. That it would be something good to push out a little bit more. I have to call it a draft, Ricky, sort of budget schedule, because it does kind of get modified every year a little bit here and there, but just so people have a sense for when we're discussing each thing. Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. Dick, I think I see your.
Yeah, I'm with you, right?
Yep.
I actually find this conversation interesting. The RTM committee discussed this and then rejects it. And then the board is having a conversation about giving someone funds so they can send out postcards to everybody in the community. I would say to that, at some point, community members need to also be responsible for themselves, and I think they do a very good job at that. I agree with Daniel that says, I don't believe we need to add any money to the budget. And, and I also agree with the statement that some people will read them and probably 50% will just throw them in the trash. So I would agree with Tim and Liz that this is a waste of your time and your energy when there's more important fish to be talking about here this evening. So I hope you don't pursue this with a monetary sum. I just think it's a total waste of money. And the last thing, Patrick, I do believe that when I was on the board, we did send out a notice for pay as you throw. So someone might correct me, but I do believe that we sent out a notice when that was going to start, because that was quite an issue when it all took place back in the 2010, 2012 era, somewhere around in there. So thank you.
I believe that's correct.
Okay. I see one more hand. Is it Mary? Am I seeing?
White.
Mary White. Welcome.
Hello. Can you see
How
me
are
or
you?
hear me?
Yes, and we can see your cat too.
Oh, yes. My name is Mary White and RTM elects members to a finance committee. I
Yep.
am one of those members. There are 5 other members this year. We all listen to or attend each budget meeting and every year write a pretty thorough report for all RTM members. I am saying that because the rest of the community might not have that time, but we devote that time to save them time. And we sincerely hope everyone reads our report. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mary, and I appreciate that reminder and appreciate the time that you give for RTM and for our community.
I always try to push that out too.
And it's always very comprehensive.
Yep.
I do read it. Okay, any other questions on the town clerk's budget? Seeing none, Hillary, thank you so much. We're going to take a 5-minute break and we'll come back right around 8:25. 6 minutes, 7-minute break. It is 8:28, gone a little over. We're gonna continue the budget discussion. Liz is with us, good. Patrick?
Sure. We're gonna rejoin the detailed budget on page 7 for general services. General services is where we fund a lot of different things that touch numerous departments. I'll highlight just some of the changes. There are not too many. There's been a reduction. We've zeroed out, in fact, IT salaries. For a couple of years, we tried an arrangement where we borrowed a employee from the library to help facilitate some IT within the broader town. That was very useful, but I think we need to pursue IT in a different direction, and we need to quit draining the library employees from the library. And so that's something we intend to work on in the future once Mr. Potter's around, and we've got some time to spend on IT, but there was no need to continue with that salary line item as it had been for the last couple of years.
Okay.
And so we zeroed that out. Further down the list, we have an increase of $9,000 in auditing. And what this is not for a particular known expense, but we are at the end of a multi-year engagement with Batchelder and Associates. I know we need to put that body of work out to bid, and they were significantly less expensive than a lot of the competitors for our last solicitation for bids. And so bumped up that budget line in anticipation of possibly our auditing services getting a little bit more expensive.
That was a 3-year engagement?
It's actually been a 4-year engagement.
Okay.
We gave an additional year to Batchelder and Associates because we wanted there to be some overlap with the new finance director. And there has been some. That's great. Now I think it's time for us to put that body of work out to bid and see if we can get it's also just healthy practice to change auditors with some regularity. We have bumped up the telephone line item just a little bit. Not that is any expansion of services. That's just to sort of meet where to better account for the expense as it has been. And then tax abatements were dropping by 5,000. This is reflective of something we, staff tried to do throughout the budget. Which is, we know there's a good deal of additional expense. And so anywhere that we can reasonably say, hey, can we cut this back a little bit? We've done so. Tax abatements, you see a $10,000 expense down from 15. And while it varies dramatically, and in some years it's not going to be anywhere close to enough, for at least half the years shown, 10,000 would have covered us. So, that 15 wouldn't have covered,
2020.
fiscal 20, but, we think there's no point in keeping that as high as we could. And if we could grab $5,000 in savings, we thought it was worth doing. So in total, general services has a fiscal 24 budget of 301,750, down just slightly, a little bit over 2,000 down from fiscal 23.
Great. Thank you very much, Patrick. Board members, questions, comments? Yes.
Yeah, this is such a random selection of things. So Patrick, since we are zeroing out the line on IT salaries in general services, where's the cost for IT services now that we're not getting help from the library staff?
So the cost is essentially in the same place as it has been. If you see further down the budget, there is computer equipment maintenance and software licenses. Those are all IT expenses. That provides not just the software licenses for all of our computer systems and things like, Microsoft Word and all that kind of groovy stuff, and Windows licenses. That provides help desk services for all town staff. It also provides a certain amount of assistance with our IT vendor in planning, but boy, not much and not nearly enough. We've got a complicated network. It's far more secure than it used to be. But it's, IT has not been an area that we have been able to spend a good deal of attention on for a couple of years. And it's something I'd like to see us expand upon in the future. How exactly and what might that cost and what might that look like remains to be seen.
That I could borrow for.
So as far as any hardware IT support,
It looks like you're packing.
It is.
Liz, thank you.
so as far as any hardware IT support or,
That's covered under the computer equipment maintenance.
Okay.
Yep.
and that budget's not going up at all.
It isn't going up at all. I've looked for every place. It's not to say that, we might not exceed that particular line item. But, trying to keep things as tight as possible this year, given the range of other increases. And don't have a specific plan for how to expand our IT services. I could tell you that I saw some really exciting opportunities that I think are going to be available to us in the coming year at Town Fair, in partnership with one of the universities, Champlain College, I think it was.
Yeah.
But again, that's not reflective in this budget. They had received a significant grant and were looking to partner with Vermont municipalities to assess their IT infrastructure and to work on a plan for improvements. Improvement plans that would need to be our responsibility, but the planning would be something that they could contribute. So it's just an option looking to explore in the coming year.
Satisfied, thank you.
Other board members, questions, comments?
I'm good.
My only question was, so the $5,000 we're dropping out of the tax abatements line item. So is that for the Board of Abatements when they abate? So we actually budget like a line item for the amount that of taxes that we're not going to.
Have every year that I've seen it. And
Yeah,
it's
that's
been
interesting.
Every year that I've seen it, it's
I just didn't
been
realize that we actually.
15,000 and
Yeah.
could
I
we
think-
afford to drop it a little bit? I think we could.
Yeah, and it's actually, I think it's good to have that in mind. Every year when we do the abatements, we talk a lot about the implications, and it'd be good to remember that we have actually budgeted a little bit of money here for abating. So
That would be good.
yeah, because Jess, you were in it for this round, right? Yeah. Okay. Great. No hands, so we'll move on to, what's our next one?
Our next one is going to be risk management, which
Yep.
is just below general services on the same page, page 7.
Great.
Risk management has a total budget for fiscal 24 of $617,000. This is a reduction of $121,000 or 16.4%. As you can see, there's not too many items in the risk management grouping. There's workers' comp, liability, occupational health, and insurance deductible. The greatest savings we are expecting in workers' compensation. This is the continued payoff, shall we say, from the town's efforts to reduce our workers' compensation costs. When we started looking at that, we had among the highest experience ratings with passive of any Vermont municipality. We're now down at the bottom. That's continuing to yield savings for the town, probably savings that could have been realized a little bit more in fiscal 23, but we're not. But we're not going to miss the opportunity this year to drop that down and still have a little extra room over what was the actuals for fiscal 22. So we're budgeting $410,000 for workers' compensation. General liability is going up just a little bit to sort of match our most recent actuals. And occupational health is going up by $7,000. Occupational health is getting a little more complicated and involved these days. This encompasses both new employee physicals, which is relevant in the police department, public works, and fire. It also is important for the annual cost of firefighter physicals, which is necessary in their particular line of work. But it's also covering some trainings that are provided to all town staff. And you'll notice, like, when you enter the building, there's AEDs on them. I think they're called AEDs, the little cardiac machines. All that is an effort to provide proper occupational health. And in total, risk management is dropping $121,000 from $738,000 in fiscal 23 to $617 in fiscal 24.
Excellent. Questions, comments, board? Jess,
I don't always have to go first, but
you're the only one with your hand up. so.
just wondering, Patrick, workers' compensation, you're budgeting for a savings over last year's budget of $140,000. Who's responsible for getting us from the top of the list to the bottom of the list?
Wow. Who's responsible? That's
Team
a
effort.
really, I would say that is a broad and shared responsibility across the organization. Town manager's office certainly had some role in adopting best practices. But I would also say that each of the 4 collective bargaining units was amenable to accepting those internal policy recommendations. So I would give credit to each of them. I think I would also throw some credit to the Human Resources Director, who oversees the Safety and Wellness Committee. That has really been integral in promoting a culture of maintaining safety. I would thank the department heads for pushing safety as a concern with their staff, and for the staff who are doing what they can to be safe. And, this also includes, when somebody goes out on a workers' compensation injury, best practice says, get them back to work as soon as possible, even if they're not able to do their regular duty, right? So maybe I'm a firefighter and I don't know, injured myself in some way, which is not beyond the realm of possibility. And while I can't come back to work today and assume my firefighter duties, I could help shelve books at the library. So that's getting people back to work sooner, reducing our workers' compensation exposure. So it's a collective effort.
That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I'm just not only the financial savings of it, but the culture of safety, taking care of each other and taking care of staff taking care of themselves. I think that's a really wonderful thing to see and see reflected in the budget of all places.
I would mention just one more thing, and I'm sorry to beat a dead horse. We also established a practice when appropriate, that workers' compensation, medical evaluations will occur at Clear Choice rather than at the emergency room, the cost of which is just totally not even comparable. If you've just, wrenched your back and, you just need a couple of days and I don't know, maybe some medication of some kind, you can spend hours and hours and hours at the ER and it costs a mountain of money. You can get over to Clear Choice, you can get in and out in an hour and, it costs a couple of hundred. So the difference there in exposure to the town is pretty tremendous. So.
Other questions or comments, board? Nope. Okay. See nobody with their hands up. We'll move on, Patrick.
Yeah, benefits is up next, and I'm gonna ask our finance director, Kim Frost, if you wouldn't mind speaking to this.
Kim, welcome back.
Okay, so we'll talk about benefits. As you see, there's lots of movement here in this category. The first two that you could take note of is Social Security and employee retirement. So those both went up by 5%. That's been consistent. That's where it's gone budget to budget. Social Security being, the payroll, Medicare, FICA, town portion, and the employee retirement is the Lincoln and the VEMR's benefit that the staff gets. The next line item is health insurance. That's our Blue Cross Blue Shield that provides all the health insurance for all the town employees. That went up by 6.7%, a total of $128,000. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, we had just done that negotiation. And we sent a memo to the board to let you know that we did get a 6.7% increase. I mean, that was a very, very generous increase, considering that, out there in the world of insurance, they're seeing double-digit increases. So that was and it was the same increase as last year also. So we had no movement in that, and that was great. The next thing is life insurance. That went down $1,729, about 5%. When we look across the years, the $33,000 will basically cover that expense. Again, as Patrick was talking about, when we were looking to where we could grab some savings, this was a line item. Our next thing are the opt-out and HSA payments. So those are the HSA payments that go to the staff for the high deductible plan, or an opt-out if an employee decides not to use our health insurance. We did increase that 10,000. So if you look the last 3 years, we were at about 180, 188, 185. And we felt that that was, more in line with the actual spend than last year's budgeted expense. When you go to the HRA expense, as you know, we self-insure we have an HRA that self-insures like our first $7,000 spend per employee. That is always kind of like throwing a dart on a dartboard. We do the best that we can. So that's something that you look at all the actuals. And we saw that last year, the last 4 years, that 250 would look like that would be an okay budget. Again, saving $16,000. Again, another place where we could kind of try and save some money. Then we have unemployment compensation that had historically been at $10,000. This was a real, savings of $5,000. Again, when we look, other than 2020, which was probably an anomaly because of COVID, the expense for unemployment is pretty low, so we feel 5,000 will cover it. And then the dependent care administration, we did get rid of that line item. That is now rolled up. We have a new HRA administration in the last 2 or 3 years called Healthy Dollars. That line item is now included in our HRA administration. It's still a benefit that is given, but it doesn't have its own administration line anymore. So that is rolled up into HRA administration. So there is an increase to this section of 172,000, just under 5%. And if you have any questions.
Great, Kim, thank you very much for the presentation. Board members? Jess?
I love budgets.
Just did have a question.
Yes, that was not all I wanted to say. So I'm curious with the social security line, that's social security and Medicare contributions. It's increasing 5%. How is that related to or reflective of the staff's across the board 5% cost of living increase, plus all the step increases that we're gonna see, plus the new position? Is it really only going up 5%?
So that's a certain percentage of salaries. So if the salaries go up 5%, if we're paying 7% of a certain number, and it's like 7.16. So if it's going up, if the salaries are going up 5%, then it is natural that Social Security and FICA would also then go up 5%. Because the total payroll dollar amount is going up. So the percentage stays the same, but go ahead, Patrick.
There's one other thing I'd like to point out. So, you know, we could take each and every individual salary and calculate what FICA and Medicaid would be for Social Security and put in that number. It would be much larger than this number. And what we found over the years is that this is a living organization, right? There are people coming, people going, people, you know, departing at this salary, people hired on at this salary. There are positions that sit vacant through the year. If we were to fully fund our calculated Social Security, we'd be what I suspect the board would think of as over budgeting because we come in quite under that. So we're in this particular grouping of line items, sort of following trends and trying to keep up rather than, you know, like, oh, there's going to be one more person. We've got to up that, you know, Social Security line. Is that fair?
That's very fair. Thank you.
Additional questions? Other questions or comments, board?
I have no
Any-
comments or questions about this $3.7 million piece of our budget.
Wow.
Put it like that.
You know, like it does kind of come down like that, doesn't it?
All right. Kim's staying up with us.
And Kim is going to hit bonds and notes.
So bonds and notes, this is our debt. This is basically the general fund's debt for the upcoming year. So this is a solid number. We have these numbers. And as you know, as we make our payments, the principal goes down and the interest also goes down each year as we keep making the payments. So the bond principal this year is for fiscal year 24 is $768,350. That is the bond. Those are the two bonds for the fire and police. And the note principal stays the same at 50,000. That is for the fire truck. And then the bond interest and the note interest have gone down because the principal has gone down. And that's basically our bonds and notes.
Daniel?
have a newbie question.
Newbie question.
I can't be a newbie question, but I just want to be, tell us the difference between a bond and a note.
So a bond, a note is like, exactly, like you're saying you're gonna buy back something. A bond is where you're borrowing the money from the bank.
They, can I also just add, they tend to structure themselves differently in how how their payments change each year. The note that we have is with Brattleboro Savings and Loan, if I'm not mistaken, for a fire truck that we purchased a number of years ago. And, they give us a really good deal. So thank you. That, if I understand it correctly, the principal payment stays the same each year, whereas with a bond, it goes down each year. Is that,
That's,
they're just different instruments that function slightly differently.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments, board? No? Okay.
Thank you.
No one from the public, so we'll move on to
Human Services,
services.
page 9, in
Oh,
its totality.
Yes.
This, this is a large and growing section of the general fund budget. It is keyed to effectively a formula approved by representative town meeting, which at last town meeting was to be 1.4% of the previous year's budget. That number in this year turns out to be 280,891. I know the Human Services Funding Committee has convened on multiple occasions. I believe they're still in process of doing their work in terms of evaluating applications for funding. And so the way in which we've been showing this in recent years is to just provide an annual appropriation and wait for them to complete their work before we adopt that into this budget.
Yep.
So we know what the bottom line number is going to be.
Yep.
Just not where it's going. Yeah.
And this reflects a change that the board implemented 2 RTMs ago, where we provided for an article where RTM could give us direction as to percentage. And in years prior to that, there was kind of a difficult discussion about exactly what the percentage should be that we propose, and should it stay with the year prior, or should it be a different number? And so now we operate under the number that that RTM actually gave us, which was 1.4%.
Exactly.
Yep.
And in the article that I know you'll approve next month, there'll be or excuse me, in the warning that I know you'll approve next month, there'll be a new article asking what shall next year's human services appropriation be, and the process will start over.
2 months.
Pardon?
January?
Yeah, in January.
Yeah.
Did I say?
Next month? Yeah, maybe.
Patrick's living
It's
in the
feeling
future.
almost like December.
It's almost December.
So.
Fair. Cool. Any questions? Just shout out to the Human Services Committee. They do a lot of work. There's lots of people applying for these funds, and they do a very thorough job evaluating each of the applicants, and they have like a weighing measured system with numerical values assigned. And they do a lot of work to provide good backup material for RTM's consideration. So thank you, Human Services Committee.
So the next section of the budget would be auxiliary services. This is at the top of page 10.
Yep.
Auxiliary services is budgeted at $412,578 in fiscal 24, which is a reduction of $130,481, or just about 24%. There are really only 3 changes in auxiliary services from previous years. A substantial reduction in the cost of ambulance service, and then the increase of Project Care, which had previously been situated in the police department budget, has been relocated to auxiliary services. And the community marketing initiative, which is also another formula-based line item, which is 10% of the previous year's actual meals and rooms tax. So that line item is rising from $37,159 in fiscal 23 to $45,028 for fiscal 24. And just, to put some clarity on the ambulance service cost, this is a estimate. This is not a known number. We do not have a future year contract, but this is calculated based on taking our current expense with Golden Cross and bumping that up for 5% for the coming year. And I'll take any questions.
Yep. Board members, questions, comments? Liz?
I understand we'll be having a discussion of the local bus service in our December meeting.
Oh, yes, correct. Which is one of the auxiliary service items that we didn't just get brought up, but yes. Yeah, and I'll just say, Patrick, I would just like to, let's stick a flag in ambulance services for discussion again, because, we're gonna be considering a report in December, and I'm sure that we may want to have further discussion on that line item.
I think Patrick's gonna need that flag.
He probably didn't need me on that. but-
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I don't know, just for the community to know, we're, this is a sort of like, we're going off of a 5% increase on the Golden Cross contract, but there's a lot of discussion and consideration on this item, so it's just sort of holding the space right now.
I guess it's worth pointing out that the contract that we currently have with them expires
July 1st.
June
June 30th.
June 30th. So we also have a meeting not scheduled yet, but we have a meeting planned for December 20th to hear back from the EMS feasibility study, which will have potentially an impact on that line for FY24. I mean,
Could very well.
July 24. you
Could very well.
expect some-
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and that date was already shouted out before, right? December.
Yeah, I think
20th.
so, but it doesn't hurt to repeat it,
Yes,
right?
yeah, so we're gonna be considering the feasibility study on the Tuesday, December 20th meeting. Yes.
I have non-ambulance services related questions. Would anyone else like to weigh in on that one?
I don't think I see anybody.
Okay. Little questions. Museum and Art Center,
Mhm.
$7,000. Tell me more about that. Because I thought that was coming off the budget when
So that will come off the budget at some point. The agreement between the town and the Museum and Arts Center involves the transition of ownership to be delayed until such time as the Amtrak new facility has been constructed and occupied. And so the way in which that particular engagement works is as soon as they move out, then our transaction occurs with BMAC. And at that point in time, we can quit budgeting this.
Okay, two other little questions. What is the line that is called climate protection, where we had money in it in 2020 and have not had any money in it since then? What is that?
So climate protection. So a long time ago, back when we had a energy coordinator position, we had an energy coordinator, I believe, that was a certain amount of financial resources that he would be able to sort of oversee and put to use to facilitate energy savings in whatever way he could. Paul assisted the town with a number of efforts and projects. I think he played a role to some degree in helping us to transition our streetlights to LED. But that was some financial resources that he could direct and put to use. On or about the time that we stopped budgeting for that, we went to town meeting with a $10,000 in line. And town meeting said that's not enough. We want to put in 100,000, I think it was. And eventually what they settled upon was we want to hire a sustainability coordinator, and that got put into place. And these funds came to go away.
Fascinating.
It was an interesting moment in municipal history.
Power of RTM.
And then the select board.
And the select board had something to do with it. But so Patrick,
Wait, just had one more.
oh, sorry.
Yes.
I just was gonna
Um,
follow up on that.
Oh, go follow up
No, I
on
was
that.
just gonna
then.
point out
On the
that
museum as well.
that the fact that climate protection existed in 2020 on this budget doesn't mean we no longer protect the climate necessarily.
It's just been reality.
It's just
we-
how we use our resources. It's
It-
actually a lot more being spent in a similar
Sure, sure.
zone of
Sure.
expenditure.
There's sustainability expenses in the planning department. And
Yeah.
we spend money wisely, I would say,
Mm.
in a number of our, capital projects. I think the water treatment facility is an ideal example. So yeah, our commitment to improving our posture as it relates to climate
Yeah.
is broad. This particular line item has been
We don't want people to show up
Sure
here
not.
with tape measures, for instance, and talk to us about.
Can't
They
think
could
of who
use
that might
tape
be.
measures, laser measuring devices, string.
Jess?
Yes, my last question is a line that I notice is flatlined on the budget for the last couple of years. It's the Town Arts Fund.
Mhm.
There are lots of other things that have had increases, and I'm just curious why the Town Arts Fund has stayed so level all this time.
That's, I think the answer to that is that that isn't anything staff would adjust. It isn't something staff oversees. It isn't something that staff directs, participates in. And so, I guess staff, I think, would be looking for direction from the board if we wanted to increase that.
Do we expend the full 15 each year?
It's
It's
given,
it's a
given to,
payout to I think it's a Wyndham.
Arts Council of Wyndham County.
Thank you.
Wyndham County Arts Council?
ACWC.
Whack,
ACWAC.
Arts Council of Wyndham County.
Arts Council. All right.
Sorry, that's trying to remember it.
So, yeah, so you just would need direction from us.
Hearing none.
Fantastic.
Liz?
Liz has a comment.
We haven't because nobody's asked.
Mhm.
Every year, marketing people ask and blah, 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 people ask, and nobody's asked.
They should ask.
Can
if
we,
they want.
yeah,
I would love to hear what the impact of 15,000 has been and if there is a need.
yeah, and if we, when it comes to something like this where, like, I don't feel particularly informed about like what an increase would look like and how much like an impactful increase would be, it would be really helpful to hear from somebody from ACWAC
Don't.
that could tell us like, yeah, if you guys like bump this $5,000 to 20, like that could make a real difference. That would be a pretty compelling, and I would consider it. But so maybe we could put a flag in this line item, and see if we could have someone speak to the board on it. Cool. Excellent.
Hey, I have a
Dear,
question.
yes.
It's actually not a question, it's more of a comment, which is hilarious. Museum and Arts Center, so it's contingent upon Amtrak getting the station built and operational. And I just thought it would be appropriate to like update the community on the timeline of that, because I think it's past its date when it would have been completed.
Yeah, I had hoped this actually would be a little bit further along than we are at the moment. I did have communication with Amtrak earlier today. on a really, really mundane, interesting detail. But they're moving forward. The project is in some ways already in swing. You'll notice, you may have noticed, there's been some track improvements, preparing what is called the siding for future use. It hasn't been used for a good long period of time. And so there's been, I think, a little more than $1 million invested in upgrading the rail line. That's part of this project. It's not the most visible part of the project, but it had to be done. It had to be done, you know, in its way. I would expect Amtrak would be coming to the board at some point in time in the next couple of months, seeking to secure the easement for the property. And so that'll be your next opportunity to act,
And presumably get an update.
and presumably get an update. Yeah, the plan, shall we say, has been for Amtrak staff to actually come to town and meet with you and speak with you and sort of give a presentation.
There was something like that was gonna happen and.
It was gonna happen a little while ago.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
But it hasn't.
Do we get to break like a big bottle of champagne on the side of the
Train?
absolutely,
the station?
it's on something, yeah.
Yeah, we'll chip in.
We did have a meeting about a year ago.
Yep.
Yep.
It was a very positive meeting.
We had a
Cool.
few.
So it's coming in the exact timing. I wish I could give you clearer detail on. I would expect it in some, you know, in the next, I don't know, 90, 120 days, I would think they would want to come. And I know there's a piece of legal business they must conduct with the select board. And I know that they've been encouraged to and have indicated that, yeah, you know, we could come to town and, you know, make this a little bit more formal. Why wouldn't we?
Yep.
So.
That's fine. People in the community do ask, hey, what's up with that new train station we were supposed to be getting?
Yeah.
And so it's, nice
Yeah.
to keep folks in the loop.
All
Communications.
right, I'm going to turn it over to public participation unless other board members have. Oh, Jess, did you have another one?
There was one more.
All right, let's hear it.
It's about public sanitation.
Mhm.
Bringing it back around to those bathrooms. 10,000 is in the budget again. Just wanted to check in on
Oh,
what that is for.
So that is for a range of potential options that the town might need to undertake in terms of maintaining public sanitation. Historically, it's been where we've accounted for things like porta potties.
so I'm actually really glad you brought this up. Because I have this on a note and I don't know where that note went, but I was wondering, would this be the line item for consideration in additional staffing or cleaning the transportation center?
No, actually, but that'll be coming up in 2 sections.
Okay, excellent.
What about the conversation we had around exploring the feasibility of public bathroom, a permanent public bathroom or bathrooms in Brattleboro?
Yeah. So we have done a lot of work on that, believe it or not.
Thank you.
And I am sort of hesitant to sort of speak to it off the cuff. I would say these are expensive. We've identified 2 locations. We've identified different facilities that we think would be appropriate for each. We have preliminary costs. They're expensive. I mean, I'm not saying they're beyond our reach, but it would be a substantial commitment. I am hesitant to speak to the
Yeah.
numbers.
Yeah,
off
that's
the
fine.
cuff
Without,
because-
let's not stray too.
Let me
far
just
off.
make sure I understand the timeline though. So that work is underway. If there is a proposal that's gonna come forward, and it would, I'm imagining, if adopted, impact.
It would be in,
But-
it would be in the capital if you
Oh,
wanted to add it. I think we're talking something in the territory of, $600,000 to $700,000. But, I'd like to refine that because I know we've done a lot of work in trying to refine that. And
All right.
But you know, that's gonna be a costly undertaking.
Yeah.
But certainly not beyond our capacity.
And
Yes.
so then the 10,000 in public sanitation would go to maintenance of that? Or would those maybe not get built
Really?
until future?
It doesn't have a specific, you know, it's a source of funds to be utilized to as needed,
Oh,
right?
Lovely. As needed.
If we were to build bathroom facilities, you know, one thought is we might not need it any longer.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Okay,
Thank you.
Dr. Reichsman, I know you've had your hand up for a long time. I apologize for the wait.
Am I visible now?
Yes, we can see you. and
Yes,
we
I
can
am.
hear you.
Just got to find the right page here. Well, thank you, Ian. Franz Reichsman, District 2. Just here in the auxiliary services budget, I think if you took at face value the ambulance service line, you'd say, wow, we are saving a ton of money on our ambulance service this year. And I think that's probably not the correct conclusion because of the changes in the fire department budget that were reviewed a week ago or so. And I wonder, has there been an actual effort to add things up to make a fair comparison from one year to the next at this point? You know, I note that the fire department salaries goes up by about the same amount as the ambulance service line item went down. And then there's an increase in the fire department training budget as well. So I'm not sure exactly how all this shakes out in terms of making a comparison financially as to the projected savings or extra expense of switching from rescue to the fire department and Golden Cross. But it seems to me that's a very important number for people to have. Maybe it'll be coming out in a really informative way in the report that's coming out sometime. But I thought as part of the budget discussion, it would fit naturally into this this evening's discussion as well.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
So this particular line item makes no attempt to address that much larger and you know, real concern. You know, this is literally just this line item in auxiliary services. We haven't done a comparison. I know there are individual costs that, you know, are we get reminded of, you know, routinely. You know, this went up and this went down. We lost the, you know, the dispatch revenue but we gave, you know, raises to the fire department, and all of that's true. So there isn't a particular accounting for that. One thing, at least not presented here at this time. One thing that I would somewhat caution us in considering, you know, particularly when we think about comparing ourselves to past years, we've been providing EMS service since 2000 and have never separated out any of those costs in our budget. There are certain things that you could say, well, that absolutely positively is, you know, EMS related. For example, you know, when we buy a 12 lead EKG, right? That's not a fire expense, that's an EMS expense, but that's a rare thing, right? If you're looking at fire department salaries, for example, how much of that is EMS? How much of that is fire? We've never calculated that. We've never accounted for it in that way. And so, you know, being able to compare this year's differentiation to previous years is going to be, you know, all but impossible. And I also think that, you know, there's another thing to keep in mind. So, you know, you might be able to look at a particular individual and say, well, between the hours of 12 and 1, they went on an EMS call. So that's an EMS expense. Okay, sure. And, you know, between the hours of 2 and 3, they went to a fire scene. And so that's a fire expense. Okay. But what about between 3 and 4 when they, you know, grab some lunch or polish the truck? Was that an EMS expense or was that a fire expense? You know, the electric bill in the fire department, is that an EMS expense? Is it a fire expense? Or is it a departmental expense? And the department provides a variety of different services to the public. That's just something to think about. And again, none of that is trying to be, we're not trying to point to this line item and say, hey, look at this amazing savings. I certainly am not saying that. I don't think the board's saying that. But it is just one line item. And at the moment, and that remains to be seen because, you know, just as you said, we've got the AP Triton report coming soon. That's how this particular number was calculated. I'll stop.
So, yeah, and I guess in short, Franz, yeah, I think we spoke to a little earlier that the report is probably going to help us make that analysis. And that's why we've stuck a flag in this and we're going to consider this line item again.
Well, I can see where it might be difficult to, you know, sort out some of the finer points of this. I do think that AP Triton notwithstanding, the town does have some responsibility to put together its own thinking on this question. I don't know. To me, this is something where people in town in general, town meeting representatives in particular, are going to be looking pretty closely at the budget. So whatever is available, whatever legitimate effort you can make in this direction, I think a lot of people would be looking at that in terms of evaluating how they look at the budget as a whole. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Franz. Daniel?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to that a little bit. So like the AP Triton report that, you know, the fire department, the fire department went through this process of like seeking people who might be able to conduct that kind of study, picked this body, to pick this organization, and then this body said, great, I guess, at some point. And that report's going to come back and it's going to be something that the board will digest, you know, so I'm responding really to the bit where you said put together your own thinking, right? Like our own thinking is going to be the digesting of that report and considering what it says and then making a decision presumably based on that. Like that's what I'm going to base my decision on, right? Because that's like what we, asked for, right? We said, please do this very complex thing so that we as policymakers can make an informed decision to the best of our abilities with the, with the folks in town in mind. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like this ambulance service line is just a very simple thing here. And the report, if I understand it, what I've heard about it so far is like, it's gonna be voluminous. And there's gonna be lots of pieces of information in there. And I hope that once we've had a chance to see the presentation on the 20th, digest it, the expectation would then be at a later point, we'll probably come back and do some talking about it. And the public will have also read the same report that we read. There won't be a special version and a public version. I don't know. So I was really just kind of hearing that kind of do our own thinking, and my thinking is going to be informed by what's in that report by the professionals that conducted it.
Yeah. And I mean, I would just say that I certainly respect that desire to see numbers comparisons and see the numbers effects. But it is, of course, our responsibility to be looking at so much more than the numbers effects of that change or that possible change. Or certainly there was a change, there might be more change, there might be less change. We don't know what's going to happen. But so it's tempting to want to try to suss it out and come up with some sort of official idea of how each of these budget numbers should match up. But at the moment, it feels like an exercise in apples and oranges. Because, you know, we could also be accused of, if we did that, then we could be accused of trying to fudge one way or the other. That's the thing I'm concerned about. Like, oh, you're trying to make your, you know, by Patrick's comment of like, well, electricity, should a percentage of that go towards EMS? I mean, it's a reasonable question, because if you're trying to separate EMS from a service that it was included within for the last 20 years, that feels like an artificial comparison. So it can kind of go either way is what I'm trying to say. So I feel for that question and I respect it, but I'm just not sure if that's something that should happen before the report.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say just also, just in fairness to Dr. Reichman and what I think he was asking about, you know, much of the Triton report is going to hopefully inform the board and the community about future choices and future states of being within the department. If what we find is, you know, we stay put and just continue doing exactly what you're doing, then I think, you know, I think his point is even more valid and relevant, which is, okay, well, if we're going to stay put in this, you know, iteration, well, what is the, you know, cost? Because obviously that one line item doesn't cover it. But so much of the Triton report, and I believe so much of its focus is on, you know, where do we go from here necessarily? So.
Okay. Ricky?
So I have two main points that may need to have multiple questions through an actual conversation for me to understand. I guess I'll start with about the public bathrooms. With where are the sites that are being considered for those?
So with the public bathrooms, we kind of got on a little bit of a tangent because Daniel asked about it and we discussed it a little bit, but
Jessica asked.
Was Jessica or Daniel? I don't know. Maybe it was Jessica. Either way, it sounds like we're going to get an update on that request that the select board made to town staff on presenting something with a lot more details that Patrick has said that he's not prepared to discuss tonight, and actually is not a warned item on here at all. So that would include like locations and the expense, all of that. So I'm going to say we're not going to talk about that now because it's
Well,
really...
I would just prefer that instead of him presenting a report, for him to have meetings scheduled, a lot like how the bike lane meetings are scheduled for public participation, so that the public can give input on the design rather than him taking the lead on it. And besides that, with Liz's comment that the art committee did not ask for money, I was on the art committee, and I understand that the majority, when I was on there going to their meetings, did not ask for more money. But when she says that the art committee did not ask for money, she's erasing the fact that I spent a lot of time and energy asking for money. And so just there's, I think, an importance to acknowledge that my contribution was asking for more money to support artwork, even though the majority of members of that group did not.
Okay. Thank you, Ricky. Moving on to
page 12, solid waste. So solid waste is, eyesight's a little strange. Solid waste is proposed to be $857,674, which is a $39,027 decrease from fiscal 23. You'll see that the solid waste grouping is responsible for a number of solid waste related items, mostly the collection and disposal of trash, the collection and disposal of recycling, and the collection and disposal of organics or compost, as we sometimes call it, along with the assessment for the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District. Most of the increases in expenditures this year are just part of the basic contract we have with Triple T Trucking around collection and the town dumpsters. Those go up by contract 1% a year. And you'll see there's a fairly significant savings being projected in the tip fee for recycling. This has been a very volatile market for a number of years, but recently that market has begun to moderate. And so we're trying to capture some of that moderation in budget savings. And so we have the tip fee for recycling down 40,000 from last year, which is still a little bit more than the most recent year's actual. I'm showing here the Wyndham Solid Waste Management assessment as decreasing $3,825. I will say that at the time the budget came together, that looked like where the Wyndham Solid Waste Management budget was going to land. It has since landed a little bit further on.
Okay.
And so I now know that the Wyndham Solid Waste assessment is going to be $84,052, a difference of about $4,600. And if the board was so inclined, I would sort of flag that and we'd update that when we update the final budget.
Okay. Board, questions, comments?
Oh,
Tim?
I have, so tipping fee is coming into our favor quite a bit, right, for recycling.
It's far reduced from where it had been a couple of years ago.
Yeah, which is elevated over previous years,
Yeah.
obviously. But you're in the revenue side, you're not recommending any change in bag fees or sales?
No, not at this point. I'm guessing, an increase in bag fees is gonna be wildly unpopular.
Oh, I would
yeah.
agree. I would agree. I mention it more to just point out the fact that there is not currently a discussion.
Right. And
But it
that
may be a discussion that has to happen at some point.
that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, February is a dangerous month. It's just something to note. Is that because we did go from 1,353 to 2,000 from actual to budget. I don't know. I'm just curious if you didn't see any trend or any need to propose a change in that.
So,
Or container sales.
I don't see one yet, but I do think it's something we're gonna need to keep an eye on.
Yep.
Eventually, we're gonna need to raise bag prices in order to comply properly with, I think it's called Act 148.
I don't think have they ever been raised?
No, they've been flat
Since-
since the
yeah.
pay as you throw and stuff.
Okay.
So,
Just a point of information, really more than.
Further point of information, I believe the revenue from bag sales, which we've budgeted in this budget for 305,000, is supposed to cover the cost of collection and the refuse tipping fee. Is
correct.
that right, Patrick?
That's correct.
So it does cover that cost. Therefore, bag revenue pays for what it needs to
Yep.
pay for. Thank you, bag buyers.
So that's our sort of like, minimum legal requirement. And, as long as we're doing that, we don't need to raise bag prices.
Right.
Doesn't
And we
mean
also
the
can't
board couldn't
reduce-
consider it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It would raise more revenue, it would offset taxes,
Nope.
it would, or we just leave it alone.
Leave it alone.
Did you say refuse and recycling?
No, it just covers the refuse.
Just
Because it's
trash.
just about trash.
terms of recycling.
Right.
That's when you refuse to do recycling. That's called refuse.
Yeah, I think in the past, we've discussed about it covering a percentage of all the services, I think.
No, I recall this conversation last year because it was the first time I really understood it. Because that line used to just be transfer, right? And then they created the separate solid waste.
Yeah, the reason we broke these out was so as to be able to keep track of just that
Yeah.
particular.
Because, and this is by law, right, by state law,
Correct.
that we have to have a system that's paying for itself. Yes. So,
Based on weight or volume.
I guess whilst we're on the topic of solid waste, I do note that in other communities, they simply sell you stickers. And you put the sticker on the bag that you already bought anyway. Because in my household, we buy a bag and then we put the bag inside a bag. So I'm buying 2 bags when I could just be buying 1.
Whose fault is that?
I don't know. I mean, like,
You can get away with dumping it right in. I reuse my bags.
yeah,
Like, but the kitchen one is can be dicey.
well, I put my kitchen waste in my little. kitchen
course.
waste
so,
bin.
so
Anyway.
is there, so I guess the question is
The
like.
question is,
yeah.
like, is it possible? I mean, I know it's possible to like go to a sticker system. Has that ever been a consideration?
Absolutely it has.
And it was not as good, or?
Prior to the town's implementation of Pay As You Throw, the board established a committee. The committee worked with staff for, I think, about a year or so. I would need to refresh my, this was a number of years ago. There was a strong preference for, and the board was persuaded to, at the time, to adopt a bag system rather than a sticker system. I believe some of the rationale, and I'm trying to remember, conversations now from maybe 2016 or so. Some of the rationale was if you use a bag system, you will be able to demonstrate your participation in the program more visibly, and that will reinforce the need to adopt the system rather than
It also limits the amount you can be throwing out. Not speaking to the weight, but the size of the amount is perfectly obvious when you have 2 different bag sizes versus the sticker. People could try to get away with really giant.
Is the sticker, are there different colored stickers for like different?
I would.
you could make any sticker you wanted.
Huh.
There could be one with your face on it.
Is there,
Ian,
Trash sticker.
I
Sweet,
have a question,
appreciate that suggestion.
Ian.
Liz,
Is there really a need to open this can of worms?
I would say that in this board
Bag
member's
of trash.
opinion, yes, there was, because I do hear complaints from people in the community saying it's stupid that I buy a bag and I also put a bag inside the bag. It's like,
Well, why don't you just use your garbage bag in your can? Why do you buy 2 bags?
yeah, well, I guess that would be getting into my household's waste management strategies, and I don't know if I have the wherewithal for that.
I have some tips for you, but I'll give them to you
Yeah, let's talk about
offline.
that later.
Yeah. I'm really into the whole trash thing.
okay, other questions or comments on the solid waste budget line items? No?
Moving along, we have just below solid waste on the same page, page 12, we have facilities maintenance.
This is.
Now, these are the folks who are essentially a team of building custodians, and they're responsible for the following facilities. The municipal center, the police department, the library, the transportation center, the Gibson Aiken Center, the Department of Public Works, and if I didn't have the transportation center in there, I'd
You
like to
said-
add it in,
yeah,
but I think
you
I
said
did.
it.
So that is a team of 4, 3 of whom are presently in the general fund, 1 of whom is in the parking fund, even though the parking fund, the parking facility receives about a third FTE in terms of time. So if the board was inclined to want to increase the staff of facilities maintenance, a new position in that department would be about an increase of approximately $38,000. As it is presently presented, there's some salary increases amongst existing staff. And the department is budgeted for $159,324, which is a $7,799 increase over fiscal 23.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Board members, I'm gonna start this one. Yeah, so we had some very difficult but I think good conversations about the transportation center a couple of weeks ago. And one of the themes that came from it was the state of the transportation center in regards to cleanliness. You know, it's a little harder to see it right now because you know, as winter comes, it's a very different sort of environment, but in the middle of the summer, it's very different. And I think one of the ways that the town could really work to try to improve the atmosphere and environment of the transportation center and allow for the actual use of the transportation center for parking and, you know, facilitating people utilizing the downtown, is that we can give it more respect by cleaning it more often, maybe thinking about other ways that it can be cleaned, and that this would be an opportunity to discuss for the FY24 budget how we could facilitate additional cleaning with more money. So that's kind of where I'm at. And we can just take a flag in and discuss it later if you want. We can also talk about it a little bit more now, but I don't know if
Flag.
flag. Okay.
Very excited about that idea, Ian.
Okay.
Though, you know, may it manifest as a salaried person or a contracted partner?
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
It's an interesting idea.
I'd be open to the flexibility, especially if we do decide on how we're using that public sanitation money / creating some new public bathrooms.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that right now? Daniel?
I think the idea is fine. So one of the other things that came up out of that conversation around the transportation center was, why don't you guys hire some private security? Now, I'm not necessarily saying that I'm in favor of that, but were a majority of this board to be in favor of that, could that live in this part of the budget? Like, I'm not saying, you know, we're not saying add extra police officers or anything, you know, it's maintaining a facility. So I'm curious whether interim town manager Moreland has a thought on that.
My thought is, frankly, you could include a line item for that in any of a number of different locations in the budget. That would be one of them, and it'd be fine. That is not speaking to the value of hiring a security firm for that facility, but certainly if you wanted to do so, putting the line item there would be fine.
Yeah, okay. You know,
The interpreter has her hand up.
Oh.
Hi there. My name is Nicole. I just wanted to let you know that the interpreters have to leave at 9:45. And we just wanted, so you didn't see us drop off the screen and we're like, whoa, where'd they go? We just wanted to let you know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move to closed captioning when that happens?
We're also really close to.
We're also really close to being done. Okay.
let me just finish my thought on that one. So when a community member brought it up at the meeting, I kind of had a knee-jerk reaction where I was like, no, you know, and I'm not necessarily saying that I'm yes. I just want to kind of maybe leave it hanging in the air a little bit longer so we could at least explore whether that is desirable and, you know, cost. So put it on the list.
Yeah, I think just before Jess, so my thought would be the flag for this item is discussing you know, an additional salaried staff position for maintenance cleaning, or just increasing that third person to full-time. Did I understand that correctly?
So there's currently four
Or four.
total humans,
Yes.
3 of whom are budgeted for in the general fund. 1 is budgeted for in the parking fund, even though the parking fund doesn't receive a full FTE benefit. So what I would propose is if we were to add someone, we'd add it here to be a whole person.
Okay, so that would be one, for the presenting of this item later. So it would be that, it would be a contractor, what that would look like instead. If we could know a little bit about like cleaning contractors, and then finally security contractors, and we can bring it up when we discuss facility maintenance. Tim?
I think just, I mean, maybe not security is a good word to use. Maybe caretaker.
Yeah, I don't know why I heard people asking for security.
Yeah.
I heard that
Well,
too.
but that gets into all kinds of questions about liability and values.
Yes.
Sure does.
Definitely about that.
That's something that Jess threw out there, so credit to you.
Thank you.
Because when I quickly advocated for it, it's like throwing it out there and I got 4 very sour faces, 3.5, I don't know. So it didn't grow into a conversation that really was substantial to anything.
Right, and I guess what I'm trying to do is at least bring it back so that we could have maybe a little more of a conversation about it.
I think I'm
was
fine
kind
with
of
that, but
reactive.
we would need to have a larger conversation, and this
Yeah.
is an uncomfortable time to have large conversations as we're trying to settle all these other flags that are coming up
that's fair.
during our budget process. And I actually don't understand like what happens now. So then we have to turn to staff and say, explain to me what happens now. Like how many times a day do people go through? How many times does it need to be cleaned? How dirty is it getting? What are we talking about dirty? You know, I don't know any of those things. So I don't want to just
I see
throw
Liz.
a half a salaried person at something that I don't understand the extent of the problem. I've heard a lot of anecdotal accounts, but I don't really know what it's like.
Okay.
You know,
Comment.
cleanliness wise, it is a parking garage. You don't want to eat off of it, even when it's super clean.
Yeah, Liz?
I don't think you're gonna find some Superman custodian to solve this problem. And I think we should be discussing this with the police department because they have a much better understanding of what actually goes on at that facility, that cleaning it and caretaking it is obviously seen by the rest of the public who came to many, many meetings to speak about it, is not enough.
I just want to be really clear that I do not believe that cleaning that facility more regularly and more effectively will solve any problem. I believe that it could be one element of a multi-pronged solution, which would obviously include the police department. I completely agree with you. I just really believe, that, you know, giving space, respect, and especially places like that where they're dirty, and it's like really dirty. You know, it's really dirty. If you ever go in there, it is. So like that's really all this conversation is. And we can definitely, we can ask that town staff be prepared to speak a little bit to what currently is sort of the schedule for cleaning, and if that is seen as sufficient, and if it, or is that not the right word?
Well, I would call it sufficient. It's the place is filthy. So the question posed to staff is what would it cost if we were to add a person and devote that person to the facility? That I can answer relatively quickly.
Okay. So
what I would also say to Daniel's point, to Liz's point somewhat, is about the idea of security. Police department's going to be here next week on the
2 weeks.
13th, excuse me, 2 weeks. Might be a worthwhile question at that point in time to say, hey, you know, do you think a contract for security services would be useful? And can you share your thoughts with that? I think, you know, it'd be a good question to direct to the police.
I think Chief Hardy's in the meeting. So Chief Hardy, consider that question directed to you. If you're able to do any kind of advanced work on that, rather than it be a kind of off the cuff thing, 2 weeks from now, that would be appreciated.
Okay, Liz?
I also just had a thought as well, whomever, and I don't know where this fits in the budget, while people are contemplating having a police substation in that facility, maybe that's the right place to have a community bathroom.
There is a fast one.
Right, is it? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
It's limited hours.
Jess, did you have another?
No.
Okay. All right, so moving on to, also, as the interpreters leave, thank you very much, interpreters. And thank you for letting us know about the timing. It's much appreciated. We get caught up.
So just two sections left. The last one is the bottom of page, or the last one on this page is the bottom of page 12, Municipal Center. That's for this particular facility. There is $81,624 budgeted, an increase of $3,039 over the previous year. Largely, this is based on the three expenses that we tried to equalize across all departments. That being fuel, which is heating fuel, and that is based on a 5-year average. Electric, where'd it go? Losing my 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, that's based on a 5-year average. Electric, which is based on a 4% increase over the most recent fiscal year. And utilities, which is looking strange. Yeah.
You have to do that once.
Do you ever do that?
Yeah, works.
All right, so just to make sure I got these right.
Utilities at $720 increase.
Yeah, so let's see, fuel expense is a 5-year average. It's a $6,500 increase.
Oh.
Electric is a 5% increase over the most recent year's actual, the most recent year's actual being fiscal 22, which was 16,000. So we're rising up to 17,134, which is a bit of a decrease over the previous year's budget. And then utilities, which is a 6% increase over the most recent year's actual, and not, so both of those are not necessarily comparisons to the previous year's budget, but based on modifications to the most recent completed actual year. So that was a mouthful and I apologize for all that.
Question.
And then ground
One second,
maintenance, we just
please.
tried to, can we possibly carve $500 out of that? And it seems like we could. So the overall increase for the department is 3.9%, and I'll take any questions.
Liz.
What happened, Patrick, in the year 2020 to cut this budget in half from 2019?
That's a great question. What happened was we created the facilities maintenance component.
Oh, we just took it out.
So previously there had been custodial services, in the municipal center, there have been custodial services in the library, there have been custodial services at the Gibson Aiken Center. All of those sort of came together and created the facilities maintenance line. Well, let's see, what else is going on here? Electric continues to go down. Well, there's a lot less going on in this building than there had been previously. The police department moved out.
Equipment went way down.
That's true. That may not have been a trend, but a specific piece of equipment that we needed to buy. If we looked at the prior year, I suspect it probably wasn't there.
Mhm.
But the building is getting a little bit less use and it's certainly costing less to operate and maintain.
Okey doke. There must be something we're missing. Maybe you could tell me that at some other time.
I'll look into it further.
Thank you.
Other questions, board?
Sure.
Yes.
Patrick, how did the pandemic impact the 2020 and 2021 trend? And were we out of that by 2022?
I would think, yes, we were out of that by 22. Because we've been mostly fully back for a while. What was the impact of the pandemic on this particular facility? I would say there wasn't a whole heck of a lot. There was more impact on some of our other facilities. I'll give you an example. The Gibson Aiken Center had a fairly significant impact because things like, indoor basketball weren't possible, even as, maybe coming together in a business setting was. So there was, as I recall, pretty significant reduction in their expenses, but I think it was less so in this building. I think it was less so.
So making the estimates against the 22 actuals makes a lot of sense because the pandemic really had zero impact on that year.
I don't feel like there was a significant impact last year from the pandemic. It was really 2 years prior.
Other questions?
Okay, so the final section is on page. Nope. It is, I know it's in between Public Works and Rec and Parks on page 16. Under regional. Pardon?
I said boo to regional.
Yes, sir. Boo to regional. These line items, we have two. One's for the Wyndham Regional Commission, the other one's for the county tax. County tax is used to cover the cost of the town's contribution to the courts budget and to the sheriff's. Wyndham Regional is the Wyndham Regional Commission. These were left pretty much flat. I have since learned in the subsequent time that the Wyndham Regional Commission is going to be up $1,752. If you'd like, I could make sure that when the budget is finally updated, that we incorporate the actual amount into that line item.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, we have not heard from the county.
Yeah. Because there is really no county administration of any.
It's the side judges.
It's the side judges. There you go. See, he passes the bar and now.
I'm pretty sure they're the ones that handle the county.
I believe you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what happens if we just didn't pay the county tax?
We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be good. probably.
No.
Yeah.
We like our taxpayers. to
I
pay
do recall
their
you
tax
asking
bills, so
about
we
this
should
maybe
also
2
do
years
that.
No, I
ago.
think just last year, wasn't it?
It could have been last year.
Could have been
Yeah.
last. And
It's
we
gotta-
also had Wyndham Regional Commission come
was
last year. I think.
Last year they came. Yeah. It's just kind of an interesting thing. Like, why do we pay for the judicial, like the county judicial?
It's mandated by
Why is that not,
Montpelier.
why is that not just a state funded? Why don't we pay our state taxes?
I do not know.
Okay, I'm not looking
I
to you.
literally know that this is how it's done. I don't know why it's done this way.
Yeah.
We've always done it this way.
I just want to say I wasn't booing the Wyndham Regional Commission. I think they're very
Oh, no,
valuable.
no.
It's the county tax, like we'd had some, I think like over the last couple of cycles, we've like asked questions about the county tax and uncovered things about it that we're like unhappy about. And we have zero control over it, and there's very little transparency around it. At least
Yeah.
as far as I'm
If
aware.
you recall, they'll tell you, yeah, we held a meeting about that.
Yeah,
And,
exactly. So thanks, Wyndham County.
Wow. Any
Should not
other
be no longer
questions
than-
I
or?
was trying to figure out what Jess was reacting to, so.
The silence in the
Oh,
room.
okay.
Rarely silent.
I know.
All right.
So, any other questions or comments or boos about the regional, line items?
No,
No.
I had one question about, it's just a circle back question.
Ooh.
But it's not really about the budget.
Okay.
Um,
So,
Wait,
not even-
So.
Human services,
yes.
just remind me don't they usually come before the board to give a little report?
Would the board like to have them come when there's?
Yes.
Is that a budget season thing?
I was trying to think about that.
Yes.
Isn't it a warning thing?
No, I mean, seriously, when,
So it's not budget related in the way that it used to be, in that, you know, it is, the number is given to them and they distribute it amongst the various applicants. But, you know, they do a great deal of work and if the board wanted to see them.
I
come,
have a thought on it, actually. So because it relates specifically to an article that we won, I think it's worth having them come to present between budget talks and our article warning. So sometime in like mid-January.
Cool.
it is, if we can manage that, I think that's when it usually is traditionally done. But I don't think it'll be a problem per se, because, but it is our budget that we present.
Yeah, and it is our article that we're presenting about the specific breakdown of all of the different ones, even though it's their work,
Yeah.
we are,
Yeah.
yeah.
It usually functions more of an appreciation for the work and an understanding of their rubric. That word rubric is only used when we talk to those people.
And there's something,
So great.
there's something to be said for like the informational meeting where we go through everything. You can only go so deep on any one item, and this gives another opportunity for that committee to sort of speak on each of those applications of their process. That's a little bit more in depth than just the informational meeting for our team.
Here, here.
So yeah, fair. Yeah, if we can schedule that. You know, I don't want to put a time pressure on them, but I'm sure they'll have to get it done before the end of January. Yep. Other loop back questions? No? All right, in that case, board, I would, okay, so we're done with new business items, 6A, I through, or first through 10, 1 through 10.
I through X.
Yeah, so I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to adjourn.
Tim has made,
Oh, are we supposed to pass something else?
no,
I don't feel-
no,
That
we're
would be
good.
the exact right motion.
Tim has made a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries 5-0. Thank you very much to BCTV. Thanks to our interpreters again. And thank you to our town staff, Kim, Patrick, thank you very much. Jessica,
Thank you,
Thank you, John Potter.
Maria.
thank you, John Potter.